You got like $3 million, huh? Yeah, we're already building a fancy house for us. Got my dream kitchen planned. My mother-in-law says all dreamy-like. I've quit my job. Gonna start a business with Ashley's inheritance. My husband says, looking way too happy about it. Wait a sec. Ashley didn't get any inheritance yet. You're quitting your job and building stuff already. What's the deal? Let's not fib here. It's obvious you got money. How about we take a trip before jumping into this house thing? Hawaii, maybe? My father-in-law adds, making things even more confusing. What are they even thinking? They want to spend the money I got from my mom on whatever they want. I'm mad as heck, but I don't know what to do. A few months back, let me take you there. My name's Ashley. I'm 38, and I teach at a high school. I've been married to David for 12 years. He's 2 years older and works in an office. Right after we tied the knot, our daughter Julie came along, and ever since, my life's been a whirlwind of work and raising her. Today, we're off to see my mom at the hospital. Hey, Grandma, it's been a bit. Ah, Julie dear, come here, my mom says, gently running her fingers through Julie's hair. She looks thinner, and her face isn't as lively. There's this guy in a suit standing by her bed. He nods at me as I glance his way and then leaves. Mom, who's that guy? Just someone I know, nothing to worry about. How are you holding up, Ashley? And David, is he doing okay? My mom's eyes, a soft shade of blue, twinkle as she smiles. She met my dad when he was in the import-export business overseas, and she moved to the U.S. to marry him. Raising a kid in a new country couldn't have been easy. That they did it together. Mom taught me a lot growing up, which is why I'm able to teach now. I'm really grateful to my parents for giving me such a good upbringing. Dad passed away a few years back, and since then, Mom's been on her own, dealing with illness and hospital stays. She handed off the business to a relative and now spends her days quietly in the hospital. I'm good, Mom. Anything you need. Just having you and Julie here is more than enough. After chatting with Mom for a while, Julie and I head home. Julie fills Mom in on school stuff and the latest book she's read. She's 10, a tricky age, but we get along well. Even setting aside my mom goggles, I think she's a smart, honest kid who's growing up nicely. We're back. Hey, welcome back. How's my mom doing? David asks when we walk in. Same old, same old. And you? How was your seminar? Heard good things about it. Excited for the next one. Lately, David's been going to seminars about quitting his job and starting a side hustle. Seems like he's after more money, but his job's not bad, and we're doing fine with my income. I don't like how obsessed he is with money. Probably gets it from his parents. They've always been tight with cash, always asking for small amounts whenever we see them. They've never bothered with Christmas gifts for Julie either. Thankfully, they live far away, so we don't see them much. David helps out around the house, though, so it's manageable. As long as I've got my mom, David, Julie, and our simple life, I'm happy. Then one day, I got a call from the hospital. Mom's condition had taken a turn for the worse, and she was in critical condition. When we reached the hospital, my mom was barely hanging on. Mom, Grandma. Ashley, I've always wanted you to be happy. Take care of Julie. She means everything. I love you. Those were her final words. My mom, who poured her heart into raising me alongside my dad, who cherished Julie more than anything. Seeing her peaceful face in the coffin, all I could do was cry. Julie stood by me, crying too. A while after Mom passed, an envelope arrived from a law firm. Ashley opened it, puzzled by the unfamiliar sender. Inside was a document. I've been given your mother's will, leaving everything to you. Ashley and her mom never talked about inheritance, so she was surprised. But with the letter in hand, she decided to visit the law firm alone. Hi, I'm Ed, the attorney, said the man with glasses, the same one from the hospital room. You were there when I visited my mom, Ashley said, recognizing him. Yeah, we met there. Your mom entrusted me with something, Ed said gently, almost bringing Ashley to tears. 500 million. Ashley exclaimed in shock. Yeah, Ashley. When your dad passed, you let your mom have all the inheritance. Now, with what she had and what she left you, after taxes, that's the sum, Ed explained. I knew my parents were well off, but I never asked for money after getting married, and I avoided talking about inheritance. It's overwhelming, Ashley said, feeling a bit dizzy, but it's a sign of love from my mom. I'll leave it to you, Ed. Your mom cared about you more than anything. She asked me to assist you if needed. You can talk to me about anything, Ed said. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Ashley nodded to Ed and left the room. As time went by, nearing her mother's 49th day memorial, David, her husband, started bringing up her mother's inheritance often. He knew they were wealthy when they married, but Ashley found his constant probing uncomfortable, especially during her mourning period. Whenever she asked him to stop, he would, but then subtly bring it up again later. And then there were her in-laws. At her mother's memorial, her father-in-law offered, Ashley, if you're worried about the inheritance, we can help. We've had our share of inheritance disputes. It can get complicated when unmarried siblings pass away. If you need help, we're here. Her mother-in-law chimed in. Sure, Ashley, who had never felt inclined to involve them before, could only offer a vague response as they pretended to understand. About 3 months after her mother's passing, David, who had been relatively quiet, finally reached his breaking point. Have you gotten your mom's inheritance yet? David's question sent a shiver down Ashley's spine. Not yet, Ashley fibbed. The process is complicated. It's been 3 months since she passed, right? Why the delay? David pressed, but then abruptly announced he was heading to bed, leaving Ashley with a gnawing feeling in her chest. The next day, while Ashley and Julie were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Julie rushed to answer it, and Ashley, peering out from the kitchen, saw her in-laws along with David returning from work. Why are they here? Ashley whispered to Julie. It's okay, Mom. I'll go to my room, Julie said, darting away nervously. What's happening? Ashley asked as her in-laws entered. Never mind that, Ed, her father-in-law said cheerfully, grabbing a beer from the fridge. We're here to celebrate. You inherited over $300 million. We've even started building a duplex for us all to live in, complete with your dream kitchen. Listen, Ashley, be happy. Her mother-in-law chimed in dreamily. We're planning to build a duplex. We've put down half of our savings and some money Mom and Dad saved up. The loan's in my name, but you can settle it all with your inheritance. It's a way to give back to them. What? I quit my job. I'm starting a business with your inheritance, David announced, looking oddly pleased. Wait a minute. What's going on? I haven't received any inheritance yet. And why are you quitting your job and talking about a duplex? Let's not play games. It's obvious you got an inheritance. How about we take a trip before diving into house plans? Maybe Hawaii. As chaos unfolded, David and her mother-in-law seemed to agree with Ed. David, with a mocking laugh, said, You're being miserly, Ashley. We checked it out because you kept saying you hadn't received the inheritance. If you don't process it within 3 months, you can't refuse it. So whether you told the truth or not, you've inherited, right? Considering my father-in-law's company, it must be more than $300 million. We'll live comfortably thanks to them. Thanks, Mom. Make sure to arrange money for the duplex and my capital. Hearing David speak like that left her feeling lightheaded. But what kind of people are these, wanting to use my precious inheritance from my mom as they please, indulging in luxury? I was burning with anger, but I couldn't speak. I worried about Julie, who was in the other room. I'm stepping out for a bit. I called out to them, but they were too engrossed in discussing their plans for the inheritance. I left without even grabbing my wallet. The night air was brisk, and as I reached a familiar hilltop park, the tears started flowing. I cried silently, feeling the weight of frustration and exploitation. My emotions were a jumble, but I couldn't bring myself to mention divorce, not with Julie still in the picture. My mother's words echoed in my mind. Take care of Julie above all else, and I cried anew. Suddenly, someone approached me. Startled, I looked up, and they began speaking softly. 3 days later, I called my husband and in-laws to a restaurant with private rooms. So you're back home after that day. Did you withdraw the money, Ashley? You shouldn't leave without telling your husband. Ignoring their words, I handed them a document, a filled-out divorce notice. David, I want a divorce. What? What's this? David's panic was palpable, and my in-laws exchanged worried glances. I can't continue like this. I'm done. I replied firmly, facing David's escalating anger. You're leaving us just because you got the inheritance? You've become so greedy. Ashley retorted. Ever since I inherited from my mom, you've been out of control, quitting jobs, planning to live with your parents without consulting me, using my savings to build a house, and now planning trips. Who's the one who changed when the money came? I can't stay with people like this. And you can't just divorce me out of nowhere. That's right. Half of everything it is David's, including our savings and half of the inheritance. David and my in-laws barked as they closed in on me. Just as I was about to respond, the door opened, revealing Julie and attorney Ed. Dad, Grandpa, Grandma, you should know better. Mom's inheritance isn't shared property, right, Mr. Ed? I'm attorney Ed. Ashley's mom entrusted me with this matter, and I've been advising her. Ed explained with a bow, leaving David flustered. But wait, inherited property isn't shared. It's not subject to division, he clarified. What? That can't be right. Is this a mistake? David stuttered. That can't be. I was stunned by their reaction. It seemed they genuinely believed they were entitled to my inheritance. If that's the case, it's even more reason not to divorce. I'll stick by you no matter what, my husband shouted with bloodshot eyes, disregarding everything. Stop it, Julie intervened calmly. Since Mom inherited, Dad hasn't thought about her once. Grandpa and Grandma only care about money. They never even mention me. I can't see them as family. David and my in-laws were taken aback. When I was upset about the inheritance, Julie spoke up. She told me, Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma are wrong. They're trying to take Grandma's legacy. Mom, I'm with you. Let's fight this together. With those words, I made a decision, contacted Ed, and arranged this meeting. Julie, that's not true. Dad wants what's best for you. And you'd be happier with us, wouldn't you? My husband and in-laws pleaded desperately. Children shouldn't interfere, they added. Julie, with a look of frustration, said, I'm going with Mom. I can't stay with you anymore, and turned away. We've made our decision. Julie and I will leave, I said calmly, which angered David. I've never cheated, and you can't force a divorce. I'll get a lawyer. We'll get that money, he threatened. Then I'll handle it from here. Ed intervened quietly. The crux here is whether there are serious grounds for ending the marriage, quitting his job, using our savings without consent, making decisions unilaterally, and Julie expressing her distress. We have multiple arguments to support our case. Additionally, your daughter has recorded evidence of all of you pressuring Ashley for her inheritance. That should serve as compelling evidence. Damn it, David slumped, and my in-laws went pale. After Matt, Julie, and I left the restaurant. A year later, thanks to Ed's efforts, my divorce with David was finalized. Julie and I moved into my mother's old house, but we received numerous letters pleading for reconciliation, and David was spotted near Julie's school, prompting us to seek a restraining order with Ed's help. After that, things quieted down. Rumor has it they did build a duplex. My retired in-laws had to find jobs at a factory, and despite David's attempts, he ended up doing manual labor. According to neighbors, their new home was rife with constant arguments, making them unpopular in the neighborhood. Julie and I continue to live peacefully, supporting each other. Recently, Julie expressed a desire to study abroad in my mother's homeland. To sever ties completely with my ex-husband, we decided to move overseas, using a portion of my mother's inheritance. I'm certain she would approve. Julie seems to thrive in her new school, and I've found work as a teacher there. Here's hoping these tranquil days persist.
The crystal glasses clinked as my sister Amanda raised her fourth toast of the evening. To Daddy's 60th birthday, she beamed, and to wise investments. That last part was aimed at me, her signature subtle dig. I sipped my wine quietly, watching the family dynamics play out around our father's massive dining table. The same table where 3 years ago our grandfather's will had been read. I'm Sarah Mitchell, youngest of 3, and according to my family, the only one who squandered their inheritance. If they only knew that my squandered $2 million had just turned into $8 billion yesterday. Sarah, darling, my mother's voice carried that familiar note of disappointment. I noticed your car's getting rather worn. Are you sure you wouldn't like to discuss financial planning with Amanda? She's done so well with her inheritance. Amanda preened, her designer dress and diamond earrings screaming success. The investment firm's portfolio is up 12% this quarter, she announced. That's on top of the beach house appreciation. My brother Michael, the middle child and sensible investment banker, nodded approvingly. Smart moves, Mandy. Unlike some people's, what did you call it, Sarah? Tech venture? I adjusted my deliberately modest sweater. No designer labels for me, not yet. Something like that. Speaking of which, my father set down his fork. Your mother and I are concerned. That inheritance was meant to secure your future, not fund some computer experiment. If only they could see my private island in the Pacific. Or the penthouse in Manhattan. Or the fleet of cars I kept hidden in a warehouse across town. But tonight wasn't about that. Tonight was about timing. Amanda's right, my mother sighed. She invested wisely. Property, blue-chip stocks, secure bonds. While you... She glanced at my second-hand watch. Well, at least you have your little consulting job. That little consulting job was actually me running my tech company, Mindframe Technologies, through a series of shell corporations. The same company that was about to shock the business world. Tell them about the new yacht club membership, Michael urged Amanda. That's what smart inheritance management looks like. Amanda lifted her chin. Well, since you mentioned it, Morgan and I just got accepted to Golden Harbor Club. Very exclusive. Not that some of us would know about such things anymore. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. Right on schedule. I just worry, my mother continued, swirling her expensive wine from a vineyard I secretly owned, about your retirement, Sarah. You're 32. The inheritance could have set you up for life like it did for Amanda and Michael. Instead, Amanda smirked, you threw it all away on some app idea. At least I invested my share wisely. The family's smart TV mounted on the dining room wall had been playing CNBC quietly in the background. Suddenly the breaking news alert chimed. Speaking of investments, I said softly, nodding toward the screen. The headline flashed, breaking. Tech giant acquires Mindframe Technologies for $16 billion, largest acquisition of the year. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against fine china. Amanda's fork clattered onto her plate. Michael choked on his bourbon. The newsreader's voice filled the stunned silence. In a shocking move, Mindframe Technologies, the secretive AI firm founded by Sarah Mitchell, has been acquired for $16 billion in cash and stock. Mitchell, who started the company with a small inheritance. That's not possible, Amanda whispered, her perfect composure cracking. You wasted your inheritance. Everyone knows that. I pulled out my phone, checking the official notification. Actually, I invested it. Just not in yacht clubs and beach houses. 16 billion? My father's voice cracked. But you drive a used Honda. Amazing what you can accomplish when people underestimate you, I replied, standing to retrieve my coat, my real coat, the hand-tailored Burberry I'd kept hidden in the hall. By the way, Amanda, about the Golden Harbor Club. I bought it last month. Consider your membership revoked. Michael was frantically Googling on his phone. There's more, he said weakly. Forbes. Wall Street Journal. They're all running the story. Tech's hidden billionaire. The stealth startup queen. Sarah, how did we not know? I smiled, remembering all the family dinners where they'd lectured me about responsibility. All the snide comments about wasting my potential. All the times Amanda had showcased her wise investments while mocking my choices. You didn't know, I said quietly, because you saw what you wanted to see. The irresponsible youngest child. The tech dreamer. The one who wasted her inheritance. My phone buzzed again, my actual assistant, not the temp job they thought I worked. Ms. Mitchell, the private jet is ready. Tokyo office needs you first thing tomorrow. Private jet. My mother's voice was faint. One of 12, I confirmed. Along with properties in 7 countries, a tech campus larger than Google's, and yes, Amanda, a much bigger yacht than the one you bragged about last Christmas. Amanda's perfect makeup couldn't hide her shock. But you live in that modest condo. A unit I keep for family visits, I corrected. My actual residence takes up the top 3 floors of that new tower downtown. The one you called new money trying too hard last month. Why the deception? My father demanded, still staring at the TV headlines. Because you taught me something valuable, I replied, checking my real watch. A Patek Philippe worth more than Amanda's beach house. Success is sweetest when no one sees it coming. The morning after my father's birthday dinner bombshell, I sat in my actual office, the 100th floor of the Mindframe Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of the Golden Harbor Club, where Amanda was probably still processing last night's revelations. Your sister's called 17 times, my executive assistant James reported. Your brother's trying to reach you through LinkedIn, and your mother's already changed her country club bio to mother of tech visionary Sarah Mitchell. I smiled, scanning the morning's headlines on my digital wall. Mindframe's $16 billion acquisition shocks tech world. Sarah Mitchell, the heiress who turned millions into billions. Inside the world's most secretive tech empire. The Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive, James continued. Your brother's investment bank is desperately trying to schedule a meeting, and Amanda's husband Morgan has sent 4 emails about investment opportunities. My phone buzzed, a text from Amanda. Family emergency meeting at mom and dad's. No, this isn't a request. Before I could respond, James's voice came through again. Your mother's in the lobby. He's brought photo albums. I checked the security feed. There stood my mother, clutching old family photos, dressed in her finest, probably hoping to run into press photographers. Send her up. And James, pull up the Golden Harbor Club ownership documents. Minutes later, my mother entered, faltering as she took in the space. The ultra-modern design, the technology, the clear views of every property I'd acquired while they thought I was failing. Darling, she managed, we had no idea. Clearly, I replied, watching her eyes dart around, probably mentally calculating the office's worth. Though you didn't care much about my ideas when you thought I was just wasting my inheritance. She clutched the photo albums tighter. I brought pictures, for the press. From your childhood. They'll want to know about your early years, your family support. Support. I raised an eyebrow. Like when you told the country club I was still finding myself last month. Or when you suggested I get a real job at Amanda's firm. We were worried about you. Living in that small condo, driving that old car. While building this, I gestured to the empire around us. Every property you see from these windows. I own it. That new tech campus on the river? Even Amanda's precious beach house neighborhood. I acquired it through a shell corporation last week. My phone buzzed, another message from Amanda. Mom's gone to talk sense into you. Don't do anything rash about the club membership. Too late, I murmured, then addressed my mother. The acquisition closes in an hour. I have meetings to prepare for. James will show you out. Sarah, please. She stepped forward, photos spilling onto my desk. We're having a family dinner tonight. To celebrate properly. Amanda's already invited the Reynolds, their sons in venture capital. No, I cut in. Amanda's not inviting anyone to the club. Because effective this morning, the entire board's been replaced. Amazing what you can do when you own something outright. James appeared at the door. The acquisition team is ready, Ms. Mitchell. Thank you, James. I turned back to my mother. Give Dad my best. And Mom? Those photos won't be necessary. Forbes already has an exclusive on how I built this empire while my family was busy underestimating me. As security prepared to escort her out, my phone lit up with a message from Michael. The bank's directors want to meet. We could collaborate, keep it in the family. I laughed, typing back, interesting offer. But I already own 30% of your bank shares. Check tomorrow's announcements. Because this was just the beginning. The acquisition would double Mindframe's value. The real estate holdings would reshape the city. And my family? They were about to learn that sometimes the child they dismissed as irresponsible had actually been choreographing everything all along. The acquisition signing ceremony at Mindframe Tower's Grand Hall buzzed with energy. Tech journalists jostled for position, cameras flashing as I stood in a perfectly tailored Alexander McQueen suit, no more pretending to shop at department stores. "Your family's here," James murmured. "All of them." I glanced toward the media section. There they were, my parents, Amanda, Michael, even Morgan, all dressed like they'd been supporting me all along. Amanda was already networking, probably claiming she'd always believed in her sister's vision. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "We need to talk. Family meeting tonight. The bank's board is very interested in any potential partnerships." I smiled, typing back, "Actually, check your email. Your bank's ownership changed hands an hour ago. Hostile takeover. Guess who's the majority shareholder?" The ceremony screens displayed Mindframe's stats. Acquisition price, $16 billion. Market impact, largest tech deal of the decade. Post-merger valuation, estimated $30 billion. "Ms. Mitchell," a Bloomberg reporter approached, microphone ready. "Your sister Amanda told us she was an early supporter of your vision. Would you say family backing was crucial to your success?" I caught Amanda's flinch in the crowd. "Actually," I replied, loud enough to carry, "I succeeded despite my family's constant criticism. They thought I'd wasted my inheritance. Sometimes the best motivation is proving everyone wrong." Mother's social smile cracked slightly. Michael's banking portfolio nearly slipped from his manicured fingers. 2 minutes to signing," James announced. I stepped to the podium, remembering all the family dinners where they'd mocked my computer hobby. All the holiday gatherings where they'd showcased Amanda's wise investments. All the times Michael had lectured me about responsible money management. 30 seconds. The screens began the countdown. In the crowd, Morgan, who'd rejected my early investment offer as too risky, was frantically checking his Golden Harbor Club membership status on his phone. The documents were signed. Mindframe's value jumped to $35 billion within minutes. The hall erupted. Somewhere in the crowd, my mother was probably planning how to rewrite history in her social circles. "Ms. Mitchell." Reporters swarmed. "How does it feel to become one of the youngest tech billionaires? Your net worth just crossed $20 billion. Any plans to slow down? Will you be upgrading from your modest condo now?" I smiled, adjusting my Cartier watch, the one I'd kept hidden during years of family criticism. "Actually, that condo was just for show. Like that old Honda and the secondhand clothes. Success is sweetest when everyone underestimates you." James appeared at my elbow. "Board meeting in 10. And Amanda's trying to schedule a family celebration at the Golden Harbor Club. Tell her the club's closed for renovation," I replied. "Indefinite renovation. Oh, and her beach house? The neighborhood's being rezoned. For my new tech campus." The ceremony screens showed the final numbers. My phone buzzed constantly, distant relatives, old friends, former critics all scrambling to connect. A message from Amanda caught my eye. "The club members are panicking. Please, we can discuss this." "Should have thought about that before spending 3 years mocking my investments," I murmured. As security cleared a path through the media, I caught sight of my father trying to reach the executive area. Time to show him what his irresponsible daughter had really built. The Mindframe executive floor was a testament to everything they'd dismissed. State-of-the-art everything, priceless art and views that made Amanda's beach house look like a pool shed. "Sarah," my father stepped forward, "this is incredible. But surely we can discuss this as a family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "We're only family now because I'm worth billions. Funny how that works." I walked to my window wall, surveying the city I'd reshaped while they thought I was failing. "That inheritance you thought I wasted? I turned it into this. Every building you see, every company you know, every success you mocked, all part of my plan." "But why the deception?" Mother whispered. "Because you taught me something valuable," I turned back. "Success isn't about impressing family. It's about proving them wrong, even if you have to do it in secret while they ridicule your choices." Amanda stepped forward, her socialite training kicking in. About the club membership. Is permanently revoked, I finished. Consider it payback for all those times you bragged about your wise investments while mocking mine. You can't just. Michael started. Actually, I can. And I am. I pressed a button, displaying Mindframe's full portfolio on my digital wall. While you were pitching me mutual funds, I was building this. Every acquisition, every property, every success you were too busy judging to notice. The stock tickers caught everyone's eye, my net worth passing $25 billion. Now, I checked my watch. I have a board meeting. We're discussing which companies to acquire next. James will show you out. Wait, Mother reached for my arm. The Reynolds are hosting a celebration dinner tonight. Everyone who's anyone. Everyone who doubted me? I raised an eyebrow. Everyone who dismissed my dreams. No thanks. My private jet's waiting. Singapore office needs attention. Private jet. Amanda whispered. A fleet of them, I confirmed. Though you probably missed that detail while bragging about your timeshare in the Hamptons. As security arrived to escort them out, Father turned back. Princess, please. We can fix this. No need, I smiled. I already fixed it. Built a billion-dollar empire, reshaped the entire city, and proved every doubt wrong. But hey, at least now you have something real to brag about at the country club. Oh wait, I own that too. After they left, James brought in the final reports. Acquisitions complete. You're trending worldwide. And your mother's already updated her social media to include proud mother of tech pioneer in her bio. I laughed, remembering all the times she'd avoided mentioning my career at social events. Let her. Success is the best revenge, especially when it comes with the power to reshape their entire world. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Amanda. Family dinner Sunday. Please. We need to make this right. I typed back. Can't make it. Too busy running the empire you said I'd never build. But feel free to discuss my success without me. You've had plenty of practice discussing my failures. Looking out over my city, watching the sun set behind buildings I owned, I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's succeeding so spectacularly that they have to live with knowing how wrong they were. And I was just getting started.
My name is Joanna. I'm 24 years old, and I live with my parents and younger brother in a small house on the outskirts of Ohio. I have a steady job at an insurance company. The salary isn't high, but it's enough to cover the electric, water, internet bills, and most of the household essentials. In fact, if I hadn't been handling the expenses, the heater would have stopped working last winter. That Christmas Eve, I came home after my shift, still wrapped in my thick coat, with the scent of coffee lingering on my sleeves. The Christmas tree was lazily decorated with old string lights from 3 seasons ago. My mother, Diane, was setting down a plate of ham on the table. My father, Harold, was already sitting at the head of the table, holding a wine glass, staring at the ceiling light as if it held the answers to his life. Dinner started in a heavy, awkward silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware and a faint Christmas song playing from the kitchen radio. I scooped some mashed potatoes onto my plate and smiled at my brother. Tyler, he's 17 this year. When my father suddenly slammed his knife down on the table, the sharp sound made me jump. Joanna, he said, locking eyes with me. You're a burden and you can't live here anymore. I thought I misheard him. I froze while my mother let out a dry, almost panicked laugh like she was trying to pretend it was just a bad joke. But my father's stare was deadly serious. The room felt frozen. Tyler stopped midair, his fork still holding a piece of chicken. He stared at me wide-eyed as if he couldn't believe what he just heard. I slowly set my fork down. What did you just say? You heard me, he said, his voice low and firm. You've stayed here long enough. This is my house, and I'm saying enough is enough. You need to move out. I couldn't speak. I hadn't stayed because I needed a place to live. I could afford my own apartment. I could live independently. I stayed because they needed me. Because Dad lost his job 3 years ago, and Mom only works part-time at the high school library. They couldn't keep things going without my contributions. And now, on Christmas Eve, they were treating me like a freeloader. Mom opened her mouth, but Dad cut her off. I've made my decision, Diane. Tyler looked between them like they were strangers. If they can kick her out this easily, his voice cracked. Who's next? I took a deep breath. I didn't want a scene. I didn't need to shout or cry. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave. But they should be ready for the cost of that decision. I leaned back in my chair, staring at them. All right. Dad smirked slightly like he just won some silent war in his head. Mom kept her head down, silent. Maybe she was stunned. Or maybe she stopped caring a long time ago. I got up and carried my half-eaten plate to the sink. I didn't want to spend another minute at that table. Before leaving the kitchen, I turned to Tyler and gave him a small nod. He was the only person left in that house I cared about. No one said a word, only the clinking of utensils continued, but it seemed like no one had an appetite anymore. I went upstairs, closed my door, and started packing my clothes. No tears, no complaints. They wanted me out, so I would go. But starting tomorrow, that heater would go silent, and this house would truly be cold in every sense of the word. I shut my bedroom door, the creaky hinges sounding like a final goodbye. I wasn't even thinking about arguing or begging. They had made their decision, and so had I. No announcements, no explanations, just action. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed, opened my closet, and began folding clothes. Every shirt, every notebook, every little accessory I had bought with overtime pay, all packed into the silent suitcase. This room once comforted me when the world felt too heavy. Tonight, it was just a shelter for someone no longer welcome. As I folded my last hoodie, a soft knock came at the door. Joanna. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. Did you lock the door? I walked over and opened it. He stepped in, shoulders hunched against something bigger than the winter cold. Are you really leaving? I nodded. They said it, didn't they? And I have no reason to stay. Tyler sat on the bed, looking around the now empty feeling room. But if you go, who's going to pay for the electricity? The internet? You know, they can't afford it. I didn't answer right away. Tyler wasn't stupid. He knew. And that's what scared him. I wasn't just his sister. I was the lifeline this house clung to. I know, I said softly. But I can't live my whole life as a walking wallet, Tyler. I deserve to breathe too. I deserve a real life. He was silent for a long time before he whispered, I want to go with you. I froze. You can't, I said gently. You're still in school. You're still a minor. They won't let you leave. Then what about you? Where will you go? Who will you stay with? He asked quickly. Like if I didn't have a perfect plan, I shouldn't leave at all. I exhaled. I'll stay at Marissa's for a few days. I have enough saved to rent a small place. I always had a plan. I just didn't expect to use it this soon. Tyler stared down at his lap, hands clenched into fists. They don't deserve you. They don't know what you've sacrificed. I sat next to him, resting my hand on his shoulder. That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you don't get dragged down too. Just hold on a little longer. Once you're old enough, I'll help you get out. He nodded slowly like he was committing my words to memory. You'll still text me, right? Every day. I smiled soft as a promise. As Tyler left the room, He glanced back at me one last time. There was something in his eyes that twisted my chest. Not just sadness, but the awful realization that from now on, he would live with two people who no longer acted like parents. I continued packing, checking every drawer and corner to make sure I didn't leave anything important behind. By the time I placed my suitcase by the door, it was nearly midnight. The whole house was dead silent, like no one had ever lived here at all. I pulled out my phone, logged into all the bill accounts, and started removing my banking information from each one. Electricity, internet, water, the secondary credit card I had opened for Mom. I closed them all in less than 10 minutes. No warnings, no explanations, because I had been warning them with my presence for 4 years, and they never listened. As I wheeled my suitcase down the stairs, I saw the living room light glowing through the crack under the door, but no one came to see me off. No one called my name. No apology. I could even hear the TV still playing. They were watching their Christmas program as if nothing had happened. I opened the door without looking back. The freezing wind hit my face like a slap, but I didn't shiver. I just felt free. For the first time in years, I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, and closed the door. As my hands tightened on the steering wheel, I knew one thing for sure. My life would no longer be dictated by anyone else. And this Christmas night was the beginning of the life I truly deserved. I drove away from the street that had imprisoned me in suffering for far too long. That Christmas Eve, there was no snow, but inside, I was frozen. Not from the weather, but from awakening. I used to think I was helping a family, but now I knew I was only enabling their dependence and ingratitude. I arrived at Marissa's place close to midnight. She was a close colleague of mine, living in a 2-bedroom apartment just a 10-minute drive from our office. When she saw me standing at her door with a suitcase and dark circles under my eyes, Marissa didn't ask many questions. She simply opened her arms and pulled me into a tight hug. "Stay as long as you need," she said, then led me into the living room where I would sleep for the next few weeks. The next morning, as the sun rose above the rows of old brick houses, I sat at Marissa's small wooden table, opened my laptop, and began my silent retaliation. I logged into the utility payment portal. Under the accounts section, my name was still listed as the responsible party. I clicked remove. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to leave this account? After removal, bills will no longer be automatically paid." I confirmed. Then came the internet bill, water, gas, and even the Amazon Prime account my mother used to stream movies every night. I removed my credit card information from every system. For them, my support had become an entitlement. Now they would finally understand the value of what they had taken for granted. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled, not out of satisfaction, but because for the first time in years, I had done something purely for myself. No more bills to pay. No more being financially exploited under the name of family duty. The next few days passed in rare peace. I went to work on time, had dinner with Marissa, and read before bed. Her small apartment was simple but warm, and more importantly, nobody yelled at me for wanting a life of my own. But that peace didn't last long. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was organizing files at the office, my phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. 5 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and 1 text from Tyler. The power's been shut off. Dad screaming all over the house. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I had cared too much for too long. An hour later, another message came from Mom. "Jonna, what's going on? The internet's down. The TV won't turn on, and your dad's furious. What did you do? I read the message without a shred of guilt. They wanted me gone. They shouldn't expect me to keep funding the home that no longer had a place for me. That night, while Marissa and I were making a simple dinner, the phone rang again. I wasn't going to answer, but instinct told me to pick up. Joanna, I don't know what's happening. The power's out. The bills haven't been paid, and we can't even watch Netflix anymore. Mom's voice trembled, full of fear and confusion. Who do you think has been paying for all that the past 4 years? I asked calmly. Silence. Then Mom's voice, soft, almost guilty. You. But your father thought. Exactly. I cut her off. You believed what Dad said. Now both of you need to live with your choices. I hung up. At the time, I thought it was over. I assumed once the services were shut off, they'd adjust. But I had underestimated Dad's dependence and pride. The next day, I got an email from the bank. Alert. Suspicious login attempt from an unfamiliar device. I checked immediately. 3 failed login attempts followed by a password reset request. My heart sank. One name came to mind. Dad. I called Tyler. His voice was low and tense. Joanna, I think Dad's trying to get into your bank account. I saw him holding Mom's old notebook where she wrote down passwords. I gripped the phone tighter. Thanks, Ty. I'll take care of it. I sat down and began changing every password. Bank accounts, emails, streaming services, even food delivery apps. Layer after layer of security went up, a silent message. I was no longer the obedient daughter they could control. I thought after updating everything, activating 2-step verification, and removing all access, it would end. I hoped they would learn to fend for themselves, but I was wrong. My family didn't know how to live without someone to blame. And without me to target, they spiraled. 3 days after I left, Tyler texted during my shift. Internet got cut off this morning. Last night, Mom had to cook on the gas stove because the microwave's dead. This morning, Dad punched the fuse box. I didn't reply. I simply put my phone down and took a deep breath. I knew that house was sinking into chaos, and I knew this was just the beginning. That night, leaving the office, I saw 6 missed calls from Mom. By the 7th, I picked up. Her voice was hoarse, crying, confused, and furious. Joanna, what have you done? The house is dark. No TV, no hot water. Your dad's losing it. What did you do? I answered calmly. I only turned off what I was paying for. From now on, you can take care of yourselves, right? You can't do this. Mom shrieked. This is your home. I pressed my lips together, steadying my voice. No, it's the place where Dad kicked me out. Remember? I'm just following orders. Silence. Only heavy breathing came through the line. Finally, she whispered, Your dad thinks you're trying to get revenge. I let out a dry, exhausted laugh. No, Mom. I'm just living my life. What bothers you is that I'm no longer living it for you. I hung up before she could say another word. I didn't need to explain any more. They were used to my silent endurance. Now they would have to get used to my silent absence. The next morning, another alert from the bank. Suspicious login attempt. Possible fraud. Blocked. I didn't have to wonder. The only person desperate enough to hack into my accounts was Dad. I immediately called Tyler. He whispered when he answered, his voice full of worry. Joanna. I think he's digging through Mom's old notebooks. He keeps yelling that he needs to get back what belongs to the family. I close my eyes, feeling a painful tightness in my chest. Did you see him using the computer all morning? He keeps trying to log in and cursing when it fails. I chuckled bitterly. Good, the alerts are working. Jonah, Tyler said slowly. He's starting to say weird stuff like that girl thinks she's won, and I'll make her regret it. I'm a little scared. I gripped the phone. If anything strange happens, lock the doors and call me immediately. Got it. Got it. I'll keep my phone with me all night. I hung up, went back to my bank account, increased the security level, and blocked all foreign devices. I changed the password again, this time 16 characters long, packed with special symbols, and linked everything to fingerprint verification. No more loopholes. That night, I didn't sleep well. Annoying unease sat heavy in my chest, a feeling that this wasn't over, and I was right. The next morning, just as I stepped out of the bathroom, Marissa called out from the living room. Joanna, someone's banging on the door. I rushed out, hair still wet, and saw her tense face. Who is it? Not sure, but he's pounding hard. I crept to the peephole. My heart dropped. It was my father. He stood in the hallway, fists hammering the door, eyes bloodshot, voice echoing. Joanna, open up. You think you can just walk away? Marissa looked at me, panicked. Are you calling the police? I nodded, already dialing 911. As the call connected, I stared at the shadow pounding outside and thought, you pushed me out of your house. You don't get to force your way into my life now. I pressed the phone to my ear as Dad kept slamming against the door, shouting, Joanna, you think you're so righteous? You think leaving solves anything? Marissa stood trembling behind me, clutching the door key, but frozen in place. I nodded reassuringly, then turned back to the phone. Yes, he's my father, but he's threatening me and trying to break into my friend's apartment. The dispatcher stayed calm. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and do not open the door. They'll arrive within 3 minutes. I hung up, my heart pounding, but my hands steady on the lock. Through the peephole, I saw Dad pacing the hall, muttering, shouting, hammering the door. Ungrateful. After everything I did for you. The sound of sirens pierced the air. As red lights flashed down the stairwell, I heard the heavy steps of officers running up. One knocked gently on the door. Police, open up. Stay calm. I opened the door and stepped aside. The police officers entered, speaking firmly to my father. Sir, you are disturbing the residents and causing a public disturbance. We need you to leave immediately. My father turned to them, his face flushed red. She's my daughter. I have the right to talk to her. One officer kept his tone calm. Not like this, sir. Your daughter called us because she felt threatened. If you don't leave immediately, we will have to act according to the law. I'm not going anywhere, he roared, suddenly lunging toward me as if trying to force me to listen. I stepped back, my palms clenched, feeling my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Immediately, the 2 officers restrained him. Sir, please maintain your distance. She owes me. She has no right to treat me like this. He shouted, his voice twisted in rage. I'm her father. I have rights. That sentence, I have rights, echoed in my mind like the final blow. For years, he had used those exact words to impose, control, and manipulate. But today, I was no longer the 17-year-old girl cowering at the dinner table, afraid of his next outburst. I owe you nothing. I said clearly, locking eyes with him. You chose to push me out of this family, and now you will have to live with that choice. The officers placed their hands on his shoulders, instructing him to turn around. As the cold handcuffs clicked shut, I saw the look in his eyes. No longer that of a father, but of a man who had lost control. Joanna, you will regret this, he hissed. You will pay for betraying your family. I said nothing. I just stood there watching him being led away, his furious shouting echoing down the long hallway. When the door finally closed, Marissa stepped closer. Are you okay? I nodded, though my throat was tight. I'm okay. I just didn't think it would come to this. That night, I walked home past the little bakery where the owner remembered my favorite pastry after just one visit. I picked up a slice of cinnamon apple pie, then strolled down the short street to my apartment. The late spring breeze carried hints of flowers and soft acoustic music from the cafe on the corner. I opened the door, flipped on the lights, and the room filled with peace. No phone ringing with demands, no emails marked urgent, no one blaming me for changing. I sat on the floor beside my new bookshelf, where I'd neatly stored the old letters in a tin box. I didn't burn them, didn't throw them out. I kept them the way people keep relics, not to remember but to never return. I used to think freedom meant being accepted by family. Now I know true freedom is walking away from people who only call you family when they need saving. I no longer live to please others. I live to feel peace when I rest my head each night, without any unsaid apologies or unpaid debts. I live to laugh loudly when I want, cry quietly when I need, and breathe deep and long without fearing abandonment. I live not to prove anything anymore. I live because I deserve to fully. And if you ask whether I regret it, I say I only regret not letting go sooner. The Anderson family Christmas party always smelled like cinnamon and condescension. I stood in the corner of my uncle's oversized living room, nursing a glass of wine that probably cost more than what he thought I made in a week, watching the usual drama unfold. So, Olivia, Uncle Jack's voice boomed across the room, drawing everyone's attention just the way he liked it. Still running that little boutique of yours. What do you call it again? The fashion? Something? Impress Collective. I replied calmly, though my grip on the wine glass tightened slightly. And yes, it's doing quite well, actually. We've expanded to 3 locations this year. He laughed, that particular laugh he reserved for when he wanted to make someone feel small. That's cute. You know, if you ever want to learn about real business, you should come shadow me at Anderson Technologies for a day. Show you how the big boys play. My cousin Marcus, Jack's son and heir apparent, snickered from his position by the fireplace. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first month's rent, but somehow still managed to look like a boy playing dress-up. I appreciate the offer, I said, taking another sip of wine. But I'm actually quite busy with my own ventures. Ventures? Uncle Jack's eyebrows shot up. Selling dresses isn't exactly what I'd call a venture, sweetheart. Now, take what we're doing at Anderson Tech. We just closed a deal with Microdyne Systems. That's real business. I noticed my father shift uncomfortably in his seat. He'd worked under his older brother Jack at Anderson Technologies for 30 years. Always one step below the top. Always almost, but not quite good enough. The company had been started by our grandfather, but somehow Jack had maneuvered his way into controlling everything by the time he was 40. The Microdine deal, I said thoughtfully. That's the one where you're supplying their new manufacturing line with processing chips, right? Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. Been reading the business pages, have we? Something like that. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been doing a lot more than reading. The little boutique was just the visible tip of a very large, very carefully constructed iceberg. While they were all busy underestimating me, I'd built something they couldn't even imagine. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another update from my real office. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway, leaving behind the sound of Jack launching into another story about his latest business triumph. The message was from Sarah, my COO. Sterling acquisition is complete. We're ready to announce whenever you give the word. I smiled, thinking about what was coming. Sterling Industries was Microdine's primary chip supplier, or at least, they had been until about 20 minutes ago. Now they belonged to Nova Technologies, my company. The company nobody in my family knew existed, because I'd built it under my mother's maiden name, Matthews. I walked back into the living room just in time to hear Uncle Jack holding court about women in business. Look, he was saying, gesturing with his whiskey glass, I'm not saying women can't work, but certain industries require a particular kind of thinking, strategy, aggression. It's just biology. Really. My cousin Jessica, Jack's daughter, sat silently beside him. She had an MBA from Harvard and had been trying to get a management position at Anderson Technologies for 2 years. Jack kept finding reasons why she wasn't ready. Speaking of strategy, I said, unable to help myself. What's your contingency plan if Sterling Industries changes their supply terms? The room got quiet. Jack stared at me like I'd just spoken in tongues. Sterling? They're locked into a 10-year contract with Microdine. Besides, they're family-owned old school. They don't make waves. I checked my watch. Interesting perspective. Just then, Jack's phone rang. Then Marcus's. Then half the phones in the room started buzzing. I watched as Jack's face went from annoyed to confused to something approaching panic as he read whatever was on his screen. This has to be a mistake, he muttered, scrolling frantically. Sterling just announced they're under new ownership. Some company called Nova. But that's impossible. I was just golfing with their CEO last week. Nova Technologies, I said clearly, causing every head in the room to turn toward me. Founded 5 years ago, specializing in next-generation processing solutions and strategic acquisitions. Jack's face started to redden. How do you? I pulled up the Wall Street Journal app on my phone and held it out to him. There it was, in bold headlines. Nova Technologies acquires Sterling Industries in surprise move. CEO Elizabeth Matthews signals aggressive expansion plans. Elizabeth Matthews, I said quietly, is my mother's maiden name. And Nova Technologies is my company. You know, the one I built while you were all so busy laughing at my little boutique. The silence in the room was absolute. I could practically hear their minds racing, recalculating every interaction we'd had over the past 5 years. That's not possible, Marcus sputtered. You sell clothes. I do, I agreed. The boutiques are quite profitable, actually, but they're also excellent places to meet people. CEOs' wives, board members' daughters. You'd be amazed what people talk about while trying on designer dresses. I turned to Uncle Jack, who looked like he might actually pass out. By the way, about that Microdine deal, you might want to call them. Since Nova now controls their chip supply, I imagine they'll be interested in renegotiating terms. You can't. Jack started, but his phone rang again. The caller ID read, Microdane CEO. I gathered my coat and bag, ready to leave. But first, I turned to Jessica. I'm expanding my executive team at Nova. If you're interested in a job where your Harvard MBA actually gets put to use, call me Monday. As I walked toward the door, I heard Uncle Jack's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it before. Olivia, wait. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Sorry, Uncle Jack. I'd love to stay and chat, but I have a merger to manage. You know how it is, real business for real players. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, leaving behind a room full of people who were just beginning to realize that while they'd been dismissing me, I'd been building an empire. And this was just the beginning. Monday morning arrived with the kind of chaos I'd carefully orchestrated. My phone had 47 missed calls, mostly from family members who suddenly wanted to catch up. I sat in my real office, the one none of them had ever seen, on the 45th floor of downtown's most prestigious building, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in shades of gold. Ms. Matthews? My assistant Michael appeared at the door. Microdane's executives are in the main conference room. And your uncle's been in the lobby for an hour. I smiled, checking my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sharp black suit, not a hair out of place. Power, but subtle. Let's not keep them waiting. The conference room fell silent as I entered. 5 men in expensive suits sat around the mahogany table, including Thomas Chen, Microdane's CEO. Uncle Jack wasn't among them. He was still downstairs, probably fuming that his name couldn't get him past security. Gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. I believe we have some contracts to discuss. Thomas Chen cleared his throat. Ms. Matthews, or should I say Ms. Anderson, this is unexpected. Elizabeth Matthews is fine, I replied smoothly. Now about Anderson Technologies' chip supply agreement. I've reviewed the terms. They're significantly below market rate. We have a binding contract, one of their lawyers interjected. With Sterling Industries, I corrected. Sterling is now Nova Technologies, and while we'll honor existing agreements, any renewal will be at current market rates, plus a 20% premium for historical undervaluation. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. That would significantly impact our bottom line. True, I agreed. However, Nova can offer something Anderson Technologies can't. Next-generation processing capability. Our R&D division has developed chips that are 40% more efficient. We've kept that quiet until now. I slid folders across the table to each of them. Inside were the specs that made their eyes widen. 5 years of secret development, funded by the profits from my little boutiques, and some very strategic early investments. This is, Thomas started. Revolutionary, I finished, and exclusive to Nova's direct partners. So, gentlemen, shall we discuss new terms? 2 hours later, I had signed a deal that would effectively end Anderson Technologies' main revenue stream within 6 months. As the executives filed out, Thomas lingered. You know, he said quietly, your uncle tried to convince me you were some sort of corporate raider. Said you had no real business experience. I raised an eyebrow. And I just watched you command a room of seasoned executives like you've been doing it for decades. Whatever else you are, Ms. Matthews, you're clearly your grandfather's heir in ways that have nothing to do with the family name. After they left, I finally called security to send Uncle Jack up. He burst into my office like a storm cloud in an Italian suit. "How dare you?" he started. "You manipulative little." "Careful, Uncle Jack," I cut him off. "You're in my building now, and I don't tolerate that kind of language in my workplace." He deflated slightly, looking around my office, twice the size of his, with better views and modern art pieces worth more than his car. "How?" he asked finally. "How did you do this without any of us knowing?" "I learned from you, actually," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "All those years watching you manipulate and maneuver, thinking no one noticed. I noticed everything. I just had a different plan." The boutiques were perfect cover and surprisingly profitable. It turns out when you treat people with respect and actually listen to them, they become incredibly loyal customers and investors. His face darkened. "You're trying to destroy me." "No, Uncle Jack. I'm trying to build something better. You spent years telling me and Jessica and every other woman in the family that we weren't cut out for real business. I spent those same years proving you wrong. The microdean contract is being renegotiated as we speak. They're moving all their chip supply to Nova. You might want to warn your shareholders." He slumped in his chair, suddenly looking older. "What do you want?" "Want?" I smiled. "I want you to go back to the office and explain to your board why you never saw this coming. I want you to tell Jessica why you really kept her out of management. I want you to experience what it feels like to be underestimated and dismissed." "I'll fight this," he threatened weakly. "You can try. But first, you might want to look into who's been quietly buying Anderson Technologies stock over the past 3 years. Here's a hint. Check under the name Matthews Investment Group." His face went pale. "How much?" 28%. Not enough for control, but enough to make the next shareholders' meeting very interesting. A knock at my door interrupted us. Jessica walked in, looking professional and determined in a suit that actually fit her role. "Sorry I'm late," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Traffic was terrible." "Late?" Jack looked between us, realization dawning. "Yes," I said. "Jessica starts today as Nova's new Chief Strategy Officer. Her Harvard MBA will be put to good use here. You can't just take my daughter. She's not yours to keep or take." I cut him off. "She's a brilliant executive who deserves a chance to prove it. Unlike you, I believe in promoting people based on talent, not gender." Jessica placed a folder on my desk. "The preliminary audit of Anderson Technologies' project management systems as requested. There are significant irregularities." Jack stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. "This is betrayal." "No," Jessica said firmly. "This is business. Isn't that what you always taught us?" I watched my uncle storm out, knowing this was just the beginning. The real battle would come at the shareholders' meeting next month. But I was ready. I'd been ready for years. "Well," Jessica said after he left, "that was dramatic." "Welcome to real business," I replied with a smile. "Now let's talk about Phase 2. Because while they thought the Sterling acquisition was my endgame, it was really just my opening move. I had 5 years of careful planning to unveil, and a family empire to rebuild, this time with a very different kind of leadership. The game was just beginning. The Anderson Technologies shareholders meeting was held in the same hotel ballroom where, 15 years ago, I'd watched my grandfather hand control of the company to Uncle Jack instead of my father. I remembered sitting in the back row, barely out of college, watching my father's face as his older brother took everything he'd worked for. Today, I sat in the front row. The tension in the room was palpable. News of the Microdyne contract loss had hit hard. Anderson Technologies' stock had dropped 30% in 2 weeks. The shareholders were out for blood, and Uncle Jack was sweating on the stage. As you can see from our projections, he was saying, his voice lacking its usual confidence, we have several promising alternatives in development. What about Nova Technologies? Someone called out. Is it true they now control our entire supply chain? Jack's eyes found mine in the crowd. I smiled pleasantly. We are in negotiations with Nova, he managed. Is it also true that Nova's CEO is your niece? Another shareholder demanded. The same niece you repeatedly denied a position on the board? Before he could answer, the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. My father walked in, followed by a team of lawyers. Right on schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, my father announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. I have here documents that should interest all of you. He began distributing folders to the board members. I watched Jack's face as he opened his copy, saw the moment he realized what he was reading. These records show systematic discrimination in hiring and promotion practices, my father continued. They also show irregular accounting of project funds over the past decade, all approved by our current CEO. The room erupted in chaos. Board members were flipping through pages, shareholders were shouting questions. Through it all, I remained seated, calm and composed. This is a trick, Jack shouted over the noise. A conspiracy between my brother and my niece too. To what, Uncle Jack? I stood finally, walking toward the stage. To expose the truth. To show how you've been running this company like your personal kingdom. I took the microphone from him. The room quieted. My name is Olivia Anderson. Though some of you may know me as Elizabeth Matthews, CEO of Nova Technologies. 15 years ago, I sat in this room and watched my grandfather's legacy being twisted into something he never intended. Today, I'm here to restore it. I nodded to my lawyers, who began distributing another set of documents. What you're receiving now is a proposal. Nova Technologies is offering to merge with Anderson Technologies. A full restructuring, new management, and immediate implementation of the next-generation processing technology that Microdyne has already signed on for. The room buzzed with excitement. These were business people, after all. They could see the potential. This merger would not only save the company but position it as a market leader in tech innovation. The Anderson name would remain, but the company culture would change. No more discrimination. No more nepotism. No more old boys club. You can't do this, Jack sputtered. The board would never. Actually, one of the board members stood up. Given these revelations and the company's current position, we're obligated to consider any offer that could protect shareholder value. And with Matthews Investment Group's 28% stake, another added, combined with the proxy votes Ms. Anderson has already secured, I believe she has the numbers. I turned to face my uncle directly. You told me to stick to my little shop. That real business was for men. Well, Uncle Jack, this is real business, and you've just been outmaneuvered by a girl who sells dresses. The vote was almost unanimous. By the end of the day, I was standing in my grandfather's old office, now my office, looking out over the city. The portrait of him still hung on the wall, his kind eyes seeming to twinkle with approval. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Jessica, carrying a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. So, she said, pouring the drinks. CEO of both Nova and Anderson Technologies. Not bad for someone who was supposed to stick to retail. I laughed, taking a glass. How's your father taking it? He's adjusting. The board's severance package helped soften the blow, though I think his ego took a hit when they named me Chief Operating Officer. You earned it, I said firmly, and not because you're his daughter or my cousin, because you're brilliant at what you do. We clinked glasses and looked out at the sunset painting the sky in shades of victory. You know, Jessica said thoughtfully, I kept wondering all these years why you never fought back when they dismissed you. Now I understand. You were playing the long game. I learned something important running those boutiques, I replied. Success isn't always about being the loudest or most aggressive. Sometimes it's about being patient, observant, and building something so solid they can't ignore it when you finally reveal it. My phone buzzed. Another message from Thomas at Microdyne, confirming our expanded partnership. On my desk, the Wall Street Journal's headline read, Nova Anderson merger reshapes tech landscape. Elizabeth Matthews makes history. To the future of Anderson Technologies, Jessica raised her glass. To doing business our way, I corrected. Later that night, I visited my grandfather's grave. I placed a copy of the merger announcement against his headstone. You always said the company needed new blood, I whispered. I hope this is what you meant. As I drove home, I thought about the little girl who used to sit in board meetings, taking notes while everyone ignored her. The young woman who opened a little boutique while secretly building an empire. The CEO who finally showed them all what real business looks like. Uncle Jack had been right about one thing. Business was about strategy and aggression. He just never realized that sometimes the most aggressive move is the one your opponent never sees coming. And as for that little shop, I kept it running, a reminder of where it all started. Because sometimes the biggest victories come disguised as small beginnings. The crystal glasses clinked as my sister Emma raised her champagne, her diamond bracelet catching the light. To another record year at Hammond Industries, she announced proudly. Our family erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the marble-floored dining room of my parents' mansion. I sat quietly, nursing my coffee, watching the scene unfold like a well-rehearsed play. Every year, the family reunion doubled as a celebration of Hammond Industries' success. The company my grandfather built, the one my father now ran, and the one my sister was being groomed to inherit. Speaking of success, Emma turned to me, her smile sharp as a paper cut. How's the job hunt going, Olivia? Still temping at that startup. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to me. My father's disappointed frown, my mother's practiced look of concern, my uncle's barely concealed smirk. I could feel their judgment like a physical weight. I'm doing fine, I replied evenly, taking another sip of coffee. Fine? Emma laughed. You're 32, living in a rented apartment, while the rest of us. She gestured around the room at our successful family members. Even cousin David just made you your partner at his law firm. I didn't remind them that I'd chosen to leave Hammond Industries 3 years ago. Didn't mention the countless nights I'd spent building something of my own, away from their suffocating expectations and rigid rules. You know, my father chimed in, swirling his scotch. There's still a position available in accounts receivable. Entry level, of course, but it's a start. Thank you, I said quietly. but I'm good where I am. Emma snorted. Good. Liv, you can barely afford rent in that shabby neighborhood. When are you going to grow up and accept that you need our help? I checked my phone discreetly. 9:47 p.m. In less than 12 hours, the billboard on Fifth Avenue would be unveiled. The one announcing Aurora Tech's acquisition of the Riverside complex, Hammond Industries' primary office location. They didn't know that Aurora Tech was my company, built from the ground up after I left their precious family empire. Remember when you thought you could revolutionize our tech department? Emma continued, clearly enjoying her audience. What was it you said? The future is in artificial intelligence and automated systems. Our father laughed. And when we explained that Hammond Industries doesn't chase trendy fads, she stormed out like a teenager. I hadn't stormed out. I'd walked away calmly after they rejected my proposal for the third time, taking my patents and research with me. Patents that were now worth more than their entire tech division. At least take the account's position, my mother pleaded. The family needs to maintain its image. What will people think? I stood up slowly, smoothing my simple black dress. Valentino, though they assumed it was off the rack. I should head home. Early morning tomorrow. Oh, right. Emma smirked. Temp work calls bright and early. As I walked toward the door, my uncle called out, Don't forget, Olivia. Family is all you've got. Don't throw it away over pride. I turned back one last time, taking in their faces, memorizing this moment. You're right, Uncle Jack. Family is important. That's why I never forget anything. Emma rolled her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see tomorrow, I said softly. Check the news around 9, especially the business section. My father frowned. What are you talking about? But I was already walking out, my heels clicking against the marble floor. In my car, a modest Toyota they love to mock, I pulled up the final acquisition papers on my phone. Aurora Tech had just completed its largest purchase to date, the entire Riverside complex, including all 16 floors currently leased to Hammond Industries. Their lease was up for renewal next month, and I, their new landlord, had other plans for the space. I drove home to my shabby apartment, actually the penthouse of a building I owned under a separate LLC. Tomorrow, everything would change. Not because I wanted revenge, but because sometimes the only way to make people see you is to become impossible to ignore. As I parked in my private garage, my phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. Billboard installation complete. All set for tomorrow's unveiling. I smiled, remembering Emma's words from earlier. Poor little sister, still living paycheck to paycheck. If only they knew that while they were laughing, I was building an empire that would make Hammond Industries look like a corner store. Tomorrow, they wouldn't be laughing anymore. They'd be calling their lawyers. I woke up early the next morning, not from anxiety, but from a calm sense of anticipation. My phone was already buzzing with notifications, emails from board members, text messages from my executive team, and several missed calls from the PR department. Today wasn't just about the billboard or the building. It was about 3 years of careful planning finally coming to fruition. As I made my morning coffee in my state-of-the-art kitchen, I thought back to the day I left Hammond Industries. I had presented my AI development proposal one last time, complete with market projections and potential revenue streams. My father had barely glanced at it. Olivia, he'd said, sighing like I was still a child bringing him a crayon drawing. Hammond Industries has thrived for 40 years because we stick to what works. We're not going to risk our reputation on your experiments. Emma had been there too, sitting in her pristine corner office, the one that should have been mine, as the eldest daughter. "Face it, Liv," she'd smirked. "You're not cut out for this world. Some people are leaders, others are, well, you know." I'd walked out that day with nothing but my research and my determination. What they didn't know was that I'd already secured private funding from venture capitalists who actually understood the potential of AI integration in corporate systems. 3 patents, and 2 years later, Aurora Tech was born. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus, my head of operations. "News vans already setting up on 5th Avenue. You should see the crowd." I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows. Looking out over the city I'd quietly been conquering piece by piece. The morning sun was just hitting the skyscrapers, including the Hammond Industries building, my building now. Another text came through, this time from my sister. "What the hell did you mean about checking the news? Are you trying to be dramatic?" I didn't respond. Instead, I dressed carefully in a tailored white Alexander McQueen suit. No more hiding behind modest clothes. Today, I would look the part of who I truly was. At 8:45 a.m., my private elevator opened directly into my underground garage where James, my driver, waited beside a Rolls-Royce Ghost, a far cry from the Toyota my family had seen last night. "Good morning, Ms. Hammond," he said, opening the door. "Big day." "Indeed it is, James." I settled into the leather seats, opening my laptop to review the press release one last time. Aurora Tech acquires Riverside Complex in historic $2.8 billion deal. CEO Olivia Hammond announces major expansion. As we drove toward 5th Avenue, my phone started ringing. Emma again, then my father, then Uncle Jack. I let them all go to voicemail. At 8:57 a.m., we pulled up to the crowd gathered around the covered billboard. News reporters were already doing their morning segments, speculating about the mysterious Aurora Tech and its reclusive CEO. I stepped out of the car, and the whispers started immediately. Most had never seen me before. I'd kept my identity private until now, letting my work speak for itself. The clicking of cameras intensified as I walked toward the small stage that had been set up. At exactly 9:00 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. The press release had just gone live across all major business networks. "Ms. Hammond," reporters called out, "is it true you're the founder of Aurora Tech? Are you related to the Hammond Industries family? What are your plans for the Riverside Complex?" Before I could respond, a commotion broke out at the edge of the crowd. I turned to see my father pushing through, his face red with fury, Emma right behind him. They froze when they saw me on stage, their expressions shifting from anger to disbelief. I stepped up to the microphone, my voice carrying clearly across the now silent crowd. "Good morning," I said, my eyes meeting my father's shocked stare. "I'm Olivia Hammond, CEO of Aurora Tech. And yes, those Hammond Industries billboards you've seen for 40 years. I nodded to my team, and the cover dropped, revealing Aurora Tech's sleek logo and my face 40 feet high above 5th Avenue. They're about to change. The cameras went wild. Emma's face had gone pale. And my father, for the first time in my life, looked at me with something other than disappointment. He looked afraid. The chaos that followed the billboard unveiling was exactly what I had anticipated. As camera flashes lit up the morning air, I maintained my composure, standing tall at the podium while my family struggled to process what was happening. "Aurora Tech," I continued, my voice carrying over the murmurs, has not only acquired the Riverside complex, but will be implementing our AI-driven smart building technology across all 60 floors. I paused, letting my next words land deliberately. Current tenants will be notified of lease updates within the next 24 hours. My father pushed forward, his face a storm of emotions. "Olivia," he hissed, trying to keep his voice down despite his obvious rage. "What do you think you're doing?" I ignored him, continuing my prepared statement. This acquisition marks the beginning of Aurora Tech's expansion into commercial real estate automation, a vision that some said was impossible. My eyes met Emma's, who was frantically typing on her phone. Sometimes the future arrives sooner than expected. As I stepped away from the podium, reporters shouted questions. "Ms. Hammond, did your family know about Aurora Tech? Was this acquisition a hostile takeover? Will Hammond Industries be evicted from the complex?" My PR team handled the press while I walked calmly toward my waiting car. My father grabbed my arm, his grip tight, but trembling. "You can't do this," he growled. "That building has been Hammond Industries' headquarters for 30 years. I gently removed his hand. "Actually, I can. Your lease expires in exactly 28 days. Check your contract." Emma rushed up, her designer heels clicking frantically on the pavement. "This is insane. You're trying to destroy everything our family built." "No," I replied softly. "I'm showing you everything you refuse to build." I turned to my father. "Remember that AI proposal you dismissed? The one you called a trendy fad? Aurora Tech's market valuation hit $12 billion last quarter. That's 3 times Hammond Industries' worth." His face went ashen. "12 billion? The meeting to discuss your lease renewal is at 2 p.m. today," I said, checking my watch. "Don't be late. I have other potential tenants interested in the space." As I slid into my car, Emma banged on the window. "You can't just walk away. We're family." I lowered the window slightly. "Funny. That's exactly what I said 3 years ago when you all laughed me out of the building." I nodded to James. "That will be all." Back at Aurora Tech's headquarters, a sleek glass tower I'd purchased last year, my executive team was waiting in the conference room. The wall-mounted screens displayed real-time news coverage of the morning's events, along with Hammond Industries' plummeting stock price. Marcus, my COO, handed me a tablet. Their board called an emergency meeting. "Apparently, your father never told them about your AI proposal. Now they're questioning his judgment." I wasn't surprised. My father had always protected Emma, grooming her for leadership while dismissing my innovations. Now his bias would cost him. "There's more," Sarah, my head of legal, added. "We've received calls from 3 other major tech firms. They want to discuss partnerships now that Aurora's gone public." I sat at the head of the table, remembering all the times my family had made me feel small for daring to think differently. "What's the status on Project Phoenix?" Marcus grinned. "Ready to launch whenever you give the word. It'll make today's news look like a warm-up." Project Phoenix was what I'd been building toward all along. The Riverside complex was just the beginning. Aurora Tech had spent the last year quietly acquiring key properties and patents across the country. Properties that Hammond Industries depended on without even knowing it. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Please, Olivia. Let's talk about this. Your father's blood pressure." I set the phone aside. They'd had 3 years to talk. 3 years to acknowledge that their oldest daughter might actually know what she was doing. Instead, they'd chosen mockery and exclusion. "Miss Hammond," my assistant called from the door. Your father and sister are in the lobby with their lawyers. They're demanding to see you. I smiled, pressing a button that activated the smart glass walls, turning them from transparent to opaque. Let them wait. We have a lease renewal meeting to prepare for. Marcus cleared his throat. About that meeting, are you really planning to evict them? No, I said, pulling up a document on my tablet. I'm planning to teach them the difference between ownership and control. I projected the document onto the main screen. A detailed proposal for Hammond Industries' digital transformation, complete with AI integration and automated systems. They can keep their offices, but only if they're willing to evolve. And if they refuse? Sarah asked. I thought of Emma's smirk at last night's reunion, of my father's dismissive waves, of all the family dinners where I was the cautionary tale. Then they'll learn what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. The hours before the 2 p.m. meeting crawled by with calculated precision. I reviewed financial reports, answered urgent emails, and watched as speculation about Aurora Tech dominated every business channel. The story was irresistible. Daughter spurned by family business becomes tech billionaire, buys family's headquarters. At 1:45 p.m., my assistant buzzed in. Your father's legal team has arrived. They're bringing Howard Matthews from Sterling and Reed. I almost laughed. Howard Matthews, the same lawyer who'd helped my father restructure Hammond Industries to ensure Emma's path to leadership while minimizing my role. He probably drafted the very documents that had pushed me out. Send them to conference room A, I replied. And Sarah? Make sure the AI demonstration is ready. I stood in my private bathroom, checking my reflection. The woman in the mirror wasn't the same person they'd mocked at last night's reunion. Gone was the careful attempt to blend in. Instead, I saw someone who had nothing left to prove and everything to show. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into the conference room. The tension was palpable. My father sat at one end of the table, his face tight with controlled anger. Emma beside him, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. Howard Matthews and 2 other lawyers flanked them like expensive guards. Thank you for coming, I said, taking my seat. Sarah and Marcus sat on either side of me, tablets ready. Shall we begin? Howard Matthews cleared his throat. Ms. Hammond, before we proceed, your father would like to speak. I gestured gracefully. Of course. My father leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. Whatever game you're playing, Olivia, it ends now. You've made your point. You're successful. Congratulations. But this vindictive display, this isn't how family behaves. Interesting, I replied, opening my laptop. Let's talk about how family behaves. Sarah, would you pull up the Hammond Industries board minutes from March 2020? Sarah projected the document onto the wall screen. There, in crisp black and white, was the transcript of the meeting where my AI proposal had been discussed. After I'd left the room, Emma's voice. We can't let her implement this. If it succeeds, she'll have too much control. My father agreed. The board votes to reject the proposal and begin transitioning Olivia to a non-essential role. The color drained from Emma's face. How did you get those minutes? I have an excellent legal team, I replied smoothly. But let's focus on the present. Your lease expires in 28 days. I have a proposal that could benefit both companies. Howard Matthews jumped in. Any attempt to evict Hammond Industries would be met with immediate legal action. The publicity alone would be fascinating, I cut in, especially when the press learns how Hammond Industries systematically suppressed innovative technology to maintain family control. I turned to my father. But I'm not here to destroy what grandfather built. I'm here to save it. Marcus distributed tablets to everyone at the table. What you're looking at, he explained, is a comprehensive integration proposal. Aurora Tech's AI systems would modernize Hammond Industries' entire operation. Projected efficiency increase, 47%. Cost reduction, 35%. The catch, Emma said, scrolling through the document. What's the catch? Aurora Tech would manage all technological implementation, I replied. And I would join Hammond Industries board, not as your employee, but as a major technology partner. My father's hand tightened on the tablet. And if we refuse? I stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Then you have 28 days to relocate 40 years of business operations. Your choice. This is blackmail, Emma snapped. No, I turned back to face them. This is business. The same business you taught me, remember? Some people are leaders, others are, well, you know. Howard Matthews was whispering urgently to my father, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Emma was still scrolling through the proposal, her expression shifting from anger to something else, recognition. The AI system, she said slowly. This is what you tried to show us 3 years ago, isn't it? But it's more advanced now. Much more, I confirmed. Aurora Tech holds 17 patents in artificial intelligence and automated systems. We're not just a real estate company. We're the future you refuse to see. My father stood abruptly. We need time to review this with our board. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow, I replied. After that, I start entertaining other offers for the space. As they gathered their things, Emma lingered behind. Why didn't you tell us? About Aurora Tech? About everything? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, seeing not the favorite child who had tormented me, but someone who might finally understand what she'd missed. Would you have believed me? I asked softly. Or would it have been another family dinner joke? She had no answer for that. After they left, Marcus turned to me. Think they'll accept? I walked back to my desk, picking up a framed photo I kept hidden in the drawer. My grandfather on the day he founded Hammond Industries. Young and full of dreams about building something that would last. They don't have a choice, I replied. And that's exactly what they need to understand. The next 24 hours unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Hammond Industries stock had dropped 18% by closing bell, while Aurora Tech's valuation soared. My phone was flooded with messages from relatives who had suddenly remembered my existence, cousins offering congratulations, aunts claiming they'd always believed in me, uncles wanting to discuss investment opportunities. I ignored them all. At my penthouse that evening, I sat on my terrace overlooking the city lights, a glass of wine in hand. My mother had tried to visit earlier, bringing my favorite childhood dessert like it could sweeten the bitter pills I'd forced them to swallow. I just don't understand, she'd said, standing in my marble foyer, taking in the obvious wealth she'd never noticed before. Why did you pretend to struggle? Why let us think you were less? Because, I'd replied, not inviting her further in, you needed to show me who you really were when you thought I had nothing. Now, as midnight approached, my phone lit up with a text from Emma. Can we talk? Just us. Please. I considered ignoring it, but something in me, maybe the last remnant of the sister I used to be, made me reply. The cafe on 73rd, 7 a.m. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept thinking about the day grandfather had handed over control to my father, how proud he'd been, how he'd always told us that Hammond Industries wasn't just a company, it was a legacy. Take care of it, he'd said, and take care of each other. We'd failed on both counts. The cafe was empty when I arrived, except for Emma sitting in a corner booth. No designer bag, no power suit, just jeans, and a sweater like when we were young. She looked tired, human. You look different, she said as I sat down. I look like myself, I corrected. You're just seeing me for the first time. She stared into her coffee. The board met until midnight. They want to accept your proposal. Dad fought it, but after they saw the projected numbers, she looked up at me. You're not just successful, are you? You're brilliant. I always was, I said quietly. You all just decided I wasn't. Because you were different, she admitted. You saw things we couldn't. It scared Dad. It scared me. She pulled out her phone, showing me an article about Aurora Tech's rise. 17 patents? A revolutionary AI system. While we were mocking you at family dinners, you were building an empire. Now you know how it feels, I said, to discover your assumptions about someone were completely wrong. Tears filled her eyes. I was awful to you. We all were. And you just took it. Planned. Built. Why? I leaned back, remembering all the nights I'd worked alone, all the small victories I couldn't share, all the times I'd wanted to prove them wrong but waited until the proof was undeniable. Because success isn't about proving people wrong, I said finally. It's about proving yourself right. The board meets at 10, she said. They're going to accept your proposal, but they want changes. They want you more involved, not just as a technology partner. They want, she hesitated. What? They want you to co-lead Hammond Industries with me. Dad's stepping down. I felt a strange tightness in my chest. And how do you feel about that? Terrified, she admitted, but also relieved. You were always better at seeing the future. I was just better at playing the game Dad created. My phone buzzed, a reminder about the 5 p.m. deadline. The game's changed, I said, standing. The question is, are you ready to learn new rules? She stood too, squaring her shoulders. Teach me. Not as my superior, but as my sister. Please? I studied her face, searching for the mocking smirk, the hidden agenda, but found only sincerity and something else. Respect. The board meeting's in 2 hours, I said. Come to my office first. There's something you need to see. In my office, I showed her Project Phoenix, Aurora Tech's complete vision for the future of corporate automation. Her eyes widened as she understood the scale of what I'd built. This isn't just about Hammond Industries, is it? She whispered. You're changing everything. No, I corrected her. We are, if you're ready. She looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I am. And Liv, I'm sorry. For everything. I nodded, turning to the window. Below, workers were installing the new Aurora Tech logo on what had been Hammond Industries' building for 4 decades. Change wasn't always comfortable, but it was always necessary. The past is done, I said. Let's build something new, together. As we walked into the board meeting 2 hours later, side by side instead of in competition, I thought about last night's family reunion. How they laughed at my supposed failures. How they dismissed my potential. But success, real success, isn't about revenge. It's about evolution. About becoming so undeniably excellent that those who doubted you have no choice but to see what they missed. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, smart enough, and strong enough, you don't just prove them wrong. You help them become better. The Oakwood Country Club's annual charity gala was in full swing, crystal chandeliers reflecting off designer gowns and family heirlooms. I stood at the edge of the ballroom, sipping sparkling water while watching my sister Victoria hold court among the city's elite. And then, she laughed, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Amanda tried to apply for membership. Can you imagine? A real estate agent thinking she belongs at Oakwood? Her little circle of socialites tittered appropriately. I checked my watch. 20 minutes until the announcement. Speaking of belonging, Victoria's voice carried deliberately across the marble floor. Catherine, darling, what are you doing here? This event is for members only. I turned to face my sister, taking in her perfect updo and custom-made gown. I was invited. By whom? Her smile was pure venom. Surely not as a potential member. This club is for successful people, dear. Not. She gestured vaguely at my simple black dress. Whatever it is you do. If she only knew what I really did. What I'd been quietly building while she played society queen. Actually, I kept my voice soft. Mr. Bradford invited me. Something about an important announcement. Victoria's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. William Bradford, the board president? I checked my watch again. 10 minutes. Don't be ridiculous. William would never. She stopped as the man himself approached us. Catherine, there you are. William Bradford, 70 years old and still sharp as a tack, smiled warmly. Everything's prepared. Shall we? Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a designer fish. William, what's going on? All in good time, my dear. He offered me his arm. Catherine? I took it, allowing him to lead me toward the podium at the front of the ballroom. Behind us, I could hear Victoria hissing to her friends, trying to make sense of what was happening. The microphone feedback cut through the elegant murmur of conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, William's voice commanded attention. Thank you all for coming to our annual charity gala. Before we begin the auction, I have an important announcement regarding the future of Oakwood Country Club. The room stilled. These people had been members for generations. Change wasn't something they welcomed. As you know, our club has faced certain financial challenges in recent years. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that those challenges have been resolved, thanks to our new owner. The whispers started immediately. Oakwood had been member-owned for a century. Please join me in welcoming the new owner of Oakwood Country Club, Ms. Catherine Pierce. The silence was absolute. I stepped forward, accepting the microphone from William while scanning the crowd. There, Victoria, her face drained of color, gripping her champagne glass like it might save her. Thank you, William. I smiled at the assembled crowd. I know change can be unsettling, especially for an institution as storied as Oakwood. But I assure you, the club's traditions will be respected. I paused. Most of them, anyway. Victoria pushed through the crowd. This is impossible. You can't afford. You don't have the resources. I finished for her. Actually, sister dear, I have quite a lot of resources. While you were busy planning charity galas, I was building an investment empire. 15 hotels, 12 residential developments, and now, I gestured around the ballroom, 1 historic country club. You're lying, she whispered. I nodded to William, who distributed folders to the board members. The transfer documents are complete. The staff has already been notified. And the first change, I turned back to Victoria, will be our membership criteria. Success, it turns out, isn't just about who you know or what you wear. You can't do this, she stepped forward. Daddy was a member here for 40 years. Yes, he was. And now his younger daughter owns it. Funny how life works out, isn't it? The room had erupted into confused murmurs. These people had never seen me as anything but Victoria's quiet sister, the one who missed social events because she was working. They were about to learn what that work had built. Oh, and Victoria? I added, just loud enough for her circle to hear. About your membership. We should talk. I'm reviewing all applications personally now. I stepped down from the podium, accepting congratulations from stunned board members while Victoria stood frozen in place. My phone buzzed. A message from my real estate director. Hotel deal in Paris is done. You now own the building next to Victoria's favorite shopping spot. I smiled, typing back. Perfect. Next target. The marina where she docks her husband's boat. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just buying what they value. It's showing them that while they were busy judging, you were busy building an empire. And I was just getting started. The morning after the gala, I sat in my new office at Oakwood, reviewing membership files while the city's elite blew up my phone. Victoria had apparently spent the night calling everyone she knew, trying to challenge the sale. Miss Pierce? My new assistant, Margaret, appeared at the door. Your sister is here. Again, and your father just arrived. Send them both in. I closed the membership folder I'd been reviewing, coincidentally Victoria's. They'd burst in like a storm. Victoria in designer casual wear, Dad in his golf clothes, both red-faced and bristling. Catherine Ann Pierce. Dad started, using my full name like I was still 12. What the hell do you think you're doing? Running my business. I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. Please sit. This isn't a business, Victoria spat. This is our club, our legacy. Was your club? I corrected gently. The papers are signed. The money's transferred. Oakwood is mine. Dad leaned forward. Where did you even get that kind of money? Would you like to see my portfolio? I opened my laptop, turning it toward them. 15 luxury hotels, 12 residential developments, 3 marinas. Well, 4 now that I've acquired Blue Harbor. Victoria's face went white. Blue Harbor? But George's boat. We'll need a new berth, yes. Unless you'd like to discuss a long-term lease. I smiled. My rates are quite reasonable. For now. This is spite, she hissed. Pure spite. No, Victoria. This is business. I stood up, walking to the window overlooking the golf course. While you were planning parties and judging people's worth by their clothes, I was building something. Something bigger than your little social circle could ever imagine. Daddy. Victoria turned to our father. Do something. But Dad was still staring at my laptop screen, at the numbers that showed exactly how much his quiet younger daughter was worth. Catherine. These properties. How long? 10 years. I turned back to them. 10 years of being the sister who was too busy working to attend your precious social events. 10 years of listening to Victoria mock my choices while I was quietly buying up half the luxury properties in 3 states. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I sat back down. Or would you have dismissed it, like you dismissed everything else I did that didn't fit your country club vision of success? Victoria stood up suddenly. I want to speak to William Bradford. The board won't stand for this. The board already voted. Unanimously, I pulled out another folder. They were quite enthusiastic about my plans for modernization and the capital injection I'm providing. Your plans? Dad's voice was weak. New spa facilities, updated golf course, expanded marina. I paused. Oh, and a complete review of the membership criteria. No more automatic legacy admissions. You can't. Victoria practically screamed. My children, their children, will need to qualify on their own merits. I opened her membership folder. Speaking of which, we should discuss your annual review. Dad stood up, putting a hand on Victoria's arm. Catherine, please. Whatever point you're trying to make has already been made. I closed the folder. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the architectural team about the new wellness center. This isn't over, Victoria promised, her voice shaking. Actually, it is. I pressed the intercom. Margaret, please show them out and send in the architects. After they left, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom, dozens of texts from Victoria's social circle, and 1 message from my investment director. Paris hotel renovation approved. Starting next week. I smiled, typing back. Perfect timing. Victoria usually shops there during Fashion Week. Because sometimes success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about building an empire so vast they can't ignore it. And every property, every acquisition, every business deal was another brick in that empire. My phone buzzed again. William Bradford. Board loved the renovation plans. Victoria's friends are panicking about membership reviews. Good, I replied. They should be. Because I wasn't just changing a country club. I was changing the rules of their entire game. And I was just getting started. 6 months later, Oakwood Country Club had transformed. The new spa gleamed with marble and glass. The golf course had been redesigned by a world-renowned architect, and the membership roster had changed dramatically. I sat in my office, reviewing the latest applications. Amanda, the real estate agent Victoria had mocked, was now our newest member, her successful agency and charitable work easily meeting our new merit-based criteria. Meanwhile, half of Victoria's social circle had failed their membership reviews. Miss Pierce? Margaret appeared at my door. Your mother's here. I looked up, surprised. Mom had been conspicuously absent since the takeover. Send her in. She entered tentatively, looking elegant, but uncomfortable. Catherine, the club looks amazing. Thank you. Please sit. She perched on the edge of the chair, clutching her designer handbag. Victoria's not doing well. I heard. Losing her membership must have been difficult. It's not just that. Mom shifted. Her friends, her social standing, everything's changed. And now with the Paris hotel. I smiled slightly. My renovation of the hotel next to her favorite shopping district had effectively ended her annual Fashion Week trips. The noise and construction made the whole area unbearable. Business is business, Mom. Is it? She met my eyes. Or is this punishment? I leaned back, considering. Do you remember my college graduation? She frowned at the apparent non sequitur. Of course. Victoria was 2 hours late because she was hosting a club luncheon. Dad left early for a golf game. You spent the whole ceremony on the phone with your interior decorator. Catherine, I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in business and economics. I had 3 job offers from top investment firms. None of you even asked about it. She had the grace to look ashamed. We should have. Yes, you should have. I stood up, walking to the window. But you were all too busy with this place, the parties, the social status, the perfect country club life. So I built my own life, my own success, my own empire. And now, you're using it to hurt your sister. No, I turned back to her. I'm using it to show her, all of you, what real success looks like. It's not about membership cards or social circles. It's about building something meaningful. By destroying what matters to her, by changing the rules. I sat down again. The new Oakwood is thriving. Membership is up. Our charitable giving has tripled. We've started a scholarship program for underprivileged youth. When was the last time Victoria's social circle did anything that actually mattered? Mom was quiet for a long moment. I saw the new membership list. Amanda Reynolds, the real estate agent, who built her agency from nothing and runs 3 homeless shelters. Yes. And Victoria could reapply if she meets the new criteria. Success, community involvement, actual achievements, rather than inherited status. Mom stood up slowly. You've changed everything. No, Mom. I just showed everyone what was always possible. I pulled out a folder. Here, your membership review is next week. I suggest you read the new criteria carefully. After she left, I walked down to the new spa complex. Members greeted me warmly, not with a fake social air of before, but with genuine respect. These were people who'd earned their place here, just as I had earned mine. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. I heard Mom came to see you. I want to talk. I typed back, my office. Tomorrow. Bring your CV and community service record. Because sometimes the biggest victory isn't in the taking, it's in the transforming. I hadn't just bought their precious club, I'd changed what it meant to belong. 1 year later, I stood at the podium during Oakwood's annual charity gala. The room looked different, more diverse, more accomplished, more real. Last year, I addressed the crowd. I stood here as the new owner. Some of you were shocked. Some were angry. Some predicted disaster. I paused, looking at Victoria in the back of the room. She'd earned her way back in, eventually, starting a foundation for educational equality and actually making a difference. But look at us now. Our membership is stronger than ever. Our impact on the community is greater. We've proven that true success isn't about who you know or where you come from. It's about what you build, what you achieve, what you give back. After the speech, Victoria approached me. You were right, she said quietly, about everything. I nodded. I know. I just never understood. While I was planning parties, you were planning. An empire, I finished. And now you understand what real success looks like. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning the game, it's changing it entirely. And as I looked out over my transformed club, at the new faces and new energy and new purpose, I knew I'd done exactly that. My phone buzzed one last time. My investment director. Ready to start on the next acquisition? I smiled, typing back, always. Because this was never about a country club. It was about showing them all what real power, real success, and real change looked like. And I was still just getting started. The Harrison family boardroom hadn't changed in 20 years. Same mahogany table, same leather chairs, same oil painting of my grandfather looking down at us with stern disapproval. I sat quietly at the far end, watching my father pace the room like he owned every molecule of air in it. Which technically, he did. Harrison Technologies needs fresh blood, he announced, hands clasped behind his back. New investment, new ideas, new leadership for the next generation. My older brother, Marcus, straightened his tie, already smirking. My younger sister, Sophia, tapped her manicured nails against her tablet, pretending to take notes. I kept still, my proposal folder unopened in front of me. That's why, Dad continued, I'm opening up shares in the company. Family only, of course. But, he paused for effect, you'll need to bring something to the table. We're talking serious investment. 7 figures minimum. Marcus raised his hand like we were still in grade school. I've already liquidated my tech stocks, Dad. I'm ready to put in $2 million. Excellent. Dad beamed. That's the kind of initiative we need. Sophia jumped in. James and I have discussed it. We can match that from our hedge fund returns. Perfect. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Real money, real commitment. Then all eyes turned to me. Alexandra Harrison, the middle child, the quiet one, the one who'd walked away from the family business 5 years ago to find herself. At least, that's how they described it. I cleared my throat. I'd like to present a proposal for modernizing our supply chain. And, Alex, Dad cut me off. We need actual capital, not ideas. How much can you invest? I met his gaze steadily. My current liquid assets are around $800,000. The room filled with poorly concealed snickers. Marcus actually rolled his eyes. Oh, sweetie. Sophia cooed with fake sympathy. This is a big kid's game. Maybe sit this one out? Dad's face hardened. We need someone with actual money to invest, Alexandra. Not whatever you've scraped together from your little consulting work. I didn't tell them about the other $50 million in assets I'd accumulated, or about the negotiations I'd been quietly conducting with Summit Industries, Harrison Tech's biggest competitor. I just nodded, gathered my things, and stood up. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity. Alex, Dad called as I reached the door. Maybe in a few years, when you've built up some real wealth. I closed the door quietly behind me. 2 weeks later, I sat in my real office, the top floor of a downtown high-rise, watching the morning news unfold on multiple screens. The headlines scrolled across each one. BUREING, Summit Industries, NNOUNCE, NNEU Aluminiership. My phone started buzzing immediately. First Marcus, then Sophia, then a stream of notifications from family members and business contacts. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the live feed from Harrison Technologies' lobby security camera. Amazing what access you can get when you own a company's main competitor. Dad had just walked in, his usual coffee in hand. He stopped at the reception desk to check messages, glancing up at the lobby TV where the story was playing. I watched as my professional headshot filled the screen, followed by the announcement. Summit Industries proud to announce new CEO and majority shareholder, Alexandra Harrison. The coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. His face went from red to red again as he fumbled for his phone. I let his call go to voicemail. Then I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Summit's board. Ladies and gentlemen, as discussed in our previous meetings, Phase 1 of our expansion plan begins today. The first target, Harrison Technologies' main semiconductor contract with Maxwell Corp. They won't see us coming. They never did. Best regards, Alexandra Harrison, CEO, Summit Industries. I hit send and leaned back in my chair, looking out over the city skyline. In the distance, I could see Harrison Technologies' headquarters, the building I'd grown up dreaming of running someday. Now I had something better. The power to show them exactly what they dismissed. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus. "What the hell, Alex? Summit? Are you trying to destroy this family?" I typed back. "No, dear brother. I'm trying to show it what real money looks like." Then I turned off my phone and called my assistant. "Sarah, please inform Summit's PR team we're ready for Phase 2. And get me Maxwell Corp's CEO on the line." "Right away, Ms. Harrison." "Oh, and your father is in the lobby. He's quite insistent about seeing you." I smiled. "Tell security to escort him out. Remind him that as CEO of a competing company, he'll need to schedule any meetings through proper channels. And if he resists, take his picture. We'll need it for the restraining order I'll be filing this afternoon." I stood up, straightening my blazer, the same one I'd worn to that family meeting 2 weeks ago, the one they'd barely noticed because they were too busy counting their own money to see I had more than all of them combined. My office phone lit up. "Maxwell Corp CEO on line 1 for you, Ms. Harrison." I picked up the receiver, my voice calm and clear. "John, Alexander Harrison here. Let's talk about your future with Summit Industries. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming." And I was just getting started. The next morning, Summit Industries stock opened 12% higher. Harrison Technologies dropped 8% in the first hour of trading. I watched both numbers from my private conference room while reviewing the Maxwell Corp contract, now exclusively Summit's, thanks to a late-night negotiation that cut Harrison Tech out of their biggest semiconductor deal. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Harrison, your sister Sophia is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but let her in." I closed my laptop. This should be interesting. Sophia burst through the door in designer heels and barely contained rage. "What are you doing, Alex? First Summit, now Maxwell? Are you trying to destroy everything Dad built?" I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please sit. You're making my security team nervous." "Screw your security team." But she sat anyway, smoothing her silk blouse with trembling hands. "Marcus is having a meltdown. Dad hasn't slept. Mom keeps crying about family loyalty." Fascinating. I pulled up a document on my tablet. "Speaking of loyalty, let's discuss Harrison Tech's new partnership with Vision Electronics. The one you and Marcus pushed through last quarter." She froze. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything, Sophia, including the fact that Vision is 3 months away from bankruptcy. Their financials are a house of cards, and you tied our family company to them because their CEO promised you and Marcus personal kickbacks." That's not. I have the offshore account records." I turned the tablet toward her. "Would you like to see them?" The color drained from her face. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Summit's forensic accounting team is very thorough. In fact, they're preparing a full report for the SEC right now. You wouldn't dare. We're family." "Family?" I leaned forward. "Was it family when you and Marcus convinced Dad I wasn't worth including in strategy meetings? When you mocked my little consulting work while I was building a billion-dollar portfolio? When you systematically pushed me out of every decision because you thought I wasn't smart enough, rich enough, or ruthless enough to play in your league?" She stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "What do you want?" "Simple. Harrison Tech cuts all ties with Vision Electronics immediately. You and Marcus resign from the board, citing personal reasons. In return, Those financial records never see the light of day. That's blackmail. No, dear sister, that's business. I opened my laptop again. You have until 5 p.m. to decide. After that, the SEC gets an anonymous tip. Dad will never agree to this. Dad doesn't have a choice. Summit now owns 30% of Harrison Tech's supplier network. One phone call from me, and your production lines stop tomorrow. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Who are you? I'm the sister you should have been paying attention to. I pressed the intercom. Sarah, please show Ms. Harrison out. And send in my M and a team. We have a busy afternoon ahead. After Sophia left, I pulled up the family photo from last Christmas. The last time we'd all been together. Me in the background, quiet, watching, planning. Them in the front, loud, confident, completely unaware that I was about to change everything. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Whatever you're planning, stop. We can talk about this. I typed back. Like you talked about the Vision Electronics deal? Check your email. You have 4 hours. Then I opened the file marked Phase 3 and began reviewing the next step in Summit's expansion. By the time my M and a team arrived, I had already identified 3 more Harrison Tech contracts ready for acquisition. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about showing them exactly who they'd underestimated, and I was just getting warmed up. The afternoon news would announce Summit's latest acquisition, a small but crucial chip manufacturer that supplied 40% of Harrison Tech's components. Dad would see it during his usual 3 p.m. coffee break, the same coffee he dropped this morning. I smiled, imagining his reaction. Sometimes the quiet ones aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they're waiting for the perfect moment to speak. And my moment? It was just beginning. At exactly 4:58 p.m., 2 minutes before my deadline, the resignations hit my inbox. First Marcus, then Sophia, both citing personal reasons for leaving Harrison Technologies board. I forwarded them to my legal team without comment. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Alexandra. Dad's voice was rough, tired. We need to talk. My office. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bring Mom. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I sat in my penthouse reviewing old family videos. Christmas mornings where my siblings' gifts dominated the frame while I opened books about business strategy. Board meetings where my raised hand was ignored. The day I graduated top of my class from business school, and they all left early because Marcus had a more important client dinner. I'd recorded everything, not for nostalgia, but for motivation. At 8:55 a.m. the next morning, they arrived. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Dad had traded his usual commanding stride for something closer to a shuffle. They sat across from me, 2 people who'd once seemed larger than life, now looking small against the backdrop of floor-to-ceiling windows. The Vision Electronics deal is dead, Dad said without preamble. And your siblings have resigned. Yes, I know. I pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. Now let's discuss Harrison Technologies' future. Our future? Mom's voice cracked. Alex, you're destroying us. No, Mom. I'm saving you from them. I clicked to the first slide. Detailed documentation of Marcus and Sophia's kickback scheme. They were bleeding the company dry. Vision Electronics was just the start. I have evidence of at least 6 other deals where they took personal payments to push through contracts that hurt Harrison Tech. Dad's face went ashen. That's impossible. We raised them better. Did you? You raised them to believe money and power were everything. That the only way to win was to step on others. The only difference is, they turned those lessons against you too. I clicked through more slides, offshore accounts, secret meetings, forged documents. With each revelation, my parents seemed to shrink further into their chairs. Why show us this? Mom whispered. Why not just let the SEC handle it? Because despite everything, Harrison Technologies is still Grandpa's legacy. And unlike my dear siblings, I actually care about that. Dad looked up sharply. What are you suggesting? A merger. I pulled up the final slide. Summit Industries and Harrison Technologies combine forces. Your technology, my market position. We could dominate the industry for the next 50 years. You want to take over our company? No, Dad. I want to save it. But this time, on my terms. I laid out the details. A fair stock exchange, guaranteed positions for loyal employees, and a new board structure that would protect both companies' interests. And if we refuse, Dad's voice was quiet. Then tomorrow morning, these documents go public. Harrison Tech's stock crashes. The SEC launches an investigation, and everything Grandpa built ends in scandal. Mom started crying softly. Dad just stared at his hands. You have until noon to decide. I stood up. Oh, and one more thing. I want the painting. What painting? Mom looked confused. Grandpa's portrait from the boardroom. The one that watched me being ignored for 20 years. I think it's time he had a new view. At 11:58 a.m., they signed the merger agreement. By 1 p.m., the news had hit every major financial network. Historic MERGER, Summit, and Harrison Technologies, JOIN, FORC. That evening, as maintenance crews hung Grandpa's portrait in my office, I received 3 text messages. From Sophia, I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. From Marcus, this isn't over, Alex. From Mom, we never saw you. I'm so sorry. I responded only to Mom. It's not about being seen anymore. It's about being heard. And now everyone's listening. 1 month later, I stood in the new combined boardroom of Summit Harrison Technologies. The company's stock had risen 40% since the merger. Our market share had doubled. And my siblings? Last I heard, they were trying to start a venture capital firm. Without access to Harrison Tech's resources or connections, they weren't having much success. My assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Harrison? The board is ready for your first meeting as CEO. I straightened my jacket and picked up my presentation folder. The same one I tried to show them at that family meeting that felt like a lifetime ago. Oh, and your father is here. He says he'd like to sit in, if you'll allow it. I thought about it. Put him in the back. He can watch. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. And as I walked into that boardroom, past Grandpa's portrait now hanging behind my chair, I knew I'd done exactly that. Good morning, everyone. I began, my voice clear and confident. Let's talk about the future. Not just my future, or the company's future, but the future I'd built while they weren't watching. Because in the end, they were right about one thing. Business is about money and power. They just never expected me to have more of both than all of them combined. And as I started my presentation, I caught Dad's eye in the back of the room. For the first time in my life, he wasn't looking at me with disappointment or dismissal. He was looking at me with respect. Too little, too late. but exactly what I'd been working for all along. The old Honda Civic made a familiar crunch on the gravel driveway of my family's estate. Through the windshield, I could see my cousin's luxury cars lined up like shiny trophies. Mercedes, BMW, Audi, each one a statement of what they thought success looked like. I parked at the far end, away from their precious vehicles, not because I was ashamed of my 15-year-old car, but because I knew what was coming. The jokes, the snide remarks, the not-so-subtle digs about how the brilliant Alexandra Morgan had fallen so far from grace. If they only knew. I checked my phone one last time before heading in. My investment app glowed with numbers that would make their heads spin, but I closed it quickly. Tonight wasn't about showing my hand. Not yet. Tonight was about watching them dig their own graves with their assumptions. The front door opened before I could knock. Alex. My mother's voice carried that familiar strain of disappointment. You're late. And, oh, you're still driving that thing. I kissed her cheek. Happy birthday to Dad, Mom. Inside, the mansion echoed with forced laughter and clicking heels. The success parade was in full swing. My cousin Marcus, showing off his new Rolex. Cousin Victoria, bragging about her recent promotion to junior partner. Uncle Philip, loudly discussing his latest real estate venture. Alexandra, my father's booming voice cut through the chatter, finally decided to join us. I turned to face him, surrounded by his usual court of admirers. At 65, Thomas Morgan still commanded attention, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting the image of old money and power. Happy birthday, Dad. I offered him the small wrapped package I'd brought. He weighed it in his hand, frowning slightly. Let me guess, another book? Open it and see. Before he could, my cousin Derek cut in. Probably all she can afford on a teacher's salary. Oh wait, you're not even teaching anymore, are you, Alex? The room rippled with poorly concealed snickers. They all thought I'd failed after leaving my teaching position at the private academy last year. None of them had bothered to ask what I was really doing. No, I said simply. I'm not. Then what are you doing? Victoria chimed in, wine glass dangling from her manicured fingers. Besides driving that embarrassing car? I smiled. Investment management. Derek laughed out loud. Right, because someone's really going to trust their money to a failed teacher who can't even afford a new car. My father unwrapped his gift, a first edition of his favorite classic novel, and set it aside without comment. Alexandra, perhaps it's time to be realistic. Your Uncle Philip could use someone in his office. Basic admin work, but it's a start. Thanks. I cut him off. But I'm doing fine. Fine, Marcus snorted. Is that what you call living in that tiny apartment? Driving a car older than Victoria's designer handbag? I took a sip of water, letting their assumptions wash over me. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. Probably another alert about one of my investments hitting its target. I had 37 companies in my portfolio now. Most of them quietly acquired through the private equity firm I'd built from scratch after leaving teaching. At least she showed up, my mother said. Ever the diplomat. Now, shall we move to the dining room? Dinner was exactly what I expected. Crystal glasses filled with $100 wine. Conversations about vacation homes and country club memberships. Every few minutes, someone would glance at me with pity or contempt, depending on their level of intoxication. Then came the moment that changed everything. A toast. Uncle Philip stood, raising his glass. To success and those who achieve it. He looked directly at me. And to those who, well, We can't all be winners, can we? Something in me snapped, not with anger, but with clarity. I'd stayed quiet for years, watching them measure success in cars and clothes and summer homes. Watching them dismiss me because I chose to live simply, to build quietly, to grow my wealth away from their shallow definitions of power. I pulled out my phone, opened my portfolio app, and cleared my throat. You're right, Uncle Philip. We can't all be winners. I stood up holding up my phone. Would someone like to calculate the combined net worth of everyone at this table, including the vacation homes, the cars, the investment properties? Derek, always quick to show off, pulled out his phone. Easy. Let's see. He started adding numbers. Other family members calling out their assets. Done, he announced proudly. Roughly 47 million, give or take a few $100,000. I nodded, then turned my phone screen toward them. That's impressive. Now, would anyone like to guess what the failed teacher is worth? The room went silent as the number registered, 9 digits, before taxes. That's impossible, Marcus stammered. Is it? I scrolled through my portfolio, watching their faces pale. Shall we go through it? The tech startups I've acquired, the real estate holdings, the private equity deals. My father's hands gripped his chair. Alexandra, what are you saying? I'm saying, I met his eyes steadily, that while you were all laughing at my Honda and my tiny apartment, I was building an empire. One that's worth more than this entire family's assets combined. Victoria's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the imported marble floor. But how? Uncle Philip's voice had lost its smug edge. I smiled, thinking of all the nights I'd worked while they partied, all the deals I'd closed while they bought new cars, all the wealth I'd built while they were busy showing off their surface-level success. I learned early, I said, putting my phone away, that true wealth doesn't need to be displayed. It needs to be multiplied. The silence that followed was deafening. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The silence didn't last long. In my experience, people with fragile egos never stay quiet for long. Prove it, Derek demanded, his face flushed. Anyone can show numbers on a phone screen. I reached for my briefcase. Not designer, just well-made leather that would last decades. Funny you should ask. I brought something for after dinner, but now seems like a good time. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were bank statements, property deeds, company ownership documents, hard proof of everything I'd built while they were busy judging my lifestyle choices. Marcus grabbed the folder first, his hands shaking slightly as he flipped through the pages. This is real, I finished for him. Every page, every number, every acquisition. Victoria leaned over his shoulder, her perfect makeup unable to hide her growing pallor. Morgan Global Ventures. That's you? I nodded, among others. The name clearly meant something to her. It should. My company had recently acquired the private equity firm where she'd been desperately trying to make partner. She just hadn't connected the dots yet. But you were teaching, my mother whispered. All those years. I was teaching, I agreed, and learning, and investing. Did you know you can learn a lot about business potential by teaching the children of CEOs and tech founders? I smiled. They talk about their parents' companies, their innovations, their blind spots. My father hadn't moved, hadn't touched the documents. He just stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Why keep it secret? He finally asked. Why drive that car? Live in that apartment? Because I leaned back in my chair. Success isn't about showing off. It's about building something sustainable, something real. Uncle Philip scoffed, trying to regain his composure. Real? You've been deceiving your family for years. No, I corrected him. I've been working while you've been posturing. There's a difference. I pulled out another document. This one made several people at the table gasp. For example, I continued, did you know that 3 months ago, when your development company was quietly looking for investors to avoid bankruptcy, Uncle Philip, I was the one who bought your debt? His face went from red to white in seconds. That's not? You couldn't. Through a subsidiary, of course, I added. I didn't want the Morgan name attached until the right moment, which apparently is now. The room erupted. Victoria started crying, probably realizing her career was now in my hands. Marcus was frantically Googling my companies on his phone. Derek just sat there, his expensive watch suddenly looking very cheap. My mother touched my father's arm. Thomas. But he held up his hand, silencing her. His eyes never left my face. How long? He asked. How long have you been planning this? Planning? I shook my head. Dad, I wasn't planning anything except building something meaningful. You're the ones who turned it into a competition, who measured success by what you could show off. I stood up, gathering my things. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have an early meeting tomorrow. Acquiring companies takes time, you know. Wait, Victoria suddenly spoke up. The firm, my firm, are you going to fire you? I finished her thought. No, Victoria. Unlike some people in this room, I don't measure my worth by how many others I can push down. I paused, but I will be watching. Merit matters in my companies, not family names. As I turned to leave, my father's voice stopped me. The book, he said quietly. The first edition. How much did it really cost? I turned back. More than your house, Dad. I bought it because I remembered you reading it to me when I was little, before success became more important than stories. For the first time in years, I saw something crack in his perfect facade. The Honda, he said. Why keep driving it? Because it works, I replied simply. And because every time you all laughed at it, every time you judged me for it, you showed me exactly who you were. It was the best market research I could have asked for. I walked to the door, then stopped one last time. Oh, and Uncle Philip, about your development company. The board meeting is on Monday. I suggest you prepare for some changes. The drive home in my trusty Honda was peaceful. As I pulled into my apartment's parking lot. Yes, I still lived in the modest apartment, despite being able to buy the entire building. My phone buzzed with messages. Family members suddenly wanting to catch up. Cousins asking about job opportunities. My mother begging me to come back and explain everything. I ignored them all, because tomorrow wasn't about family drama. Tomorrow was about the 3 company acquisitions I had planned, the new tech startup I was funding, and the educational foundation I was launching, the one that would help other failures like me build their own empires. Let them stew in their shock. Let them realize that while they were buying status symbols, I was buying actual symbols of success, companies, innovations, opportunities. They thought tonight was the big reveal. They had no idea what was coming next. The morning after my father's birthday dinner, I sat in my office on the top floor of an unmarked building in downtown Manhattan. No company logo on the door. No flashy signage. Just quiet power. the way I liked it. My assistant, Sarah, walked in with my morning coffee. Unlike my family's pretentious tastes, I preferred simple dark roast in a plain ceramic mug. "Your father is in the lobby," she said, not bothering to hide her surprise. "He's been there since we opened." I checked my watch. 7:30 a.m. How long? Security says he arrived at 6. I smiled slightly. Thomas Morgan, waiting for anyone, let alone for an hour and a half. That was new. "Send him up in 10 minutes, I said, turning to my computer to finish what I was doing. When he walked in, he looked different. The perfect suit was still there, but something had changed. The aristocratic posture was gone, replaced by something almost humble. "Alexandra." He stood awkwardly, like he didn't know whether to sit or stay standing. "This is quite an office." I gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you, Dad?" He sat, looking around at the minimalist decor. No awards on the walls, no fancy artwork, just clean lines and clear purpose. "Your mother is. We're all." He struggled with the words. "Yesterday was quite a shock." I imagine it was. He pulled out his phone, handed it to me. On the screen was an article from this morning's Wall Street Journal. Morgan Global Ventures acquires tech giant for $2.1 billion. "Ah," I said. "That wasn't supposed to be announced until market open." "The Morgan in the company name," he said quietly. "That's really you?" "Yes. Why didn't you ever tell us? Tell me?" I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Would you have listened? Really listened? Or would you have tried to take control, like you did with everything else? He flinched. "I only wanted the best for me," I finished. "No, Dad. You wanted what looked best to others. There's a difference." Silence fell between us. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city was coming alive, unaware of the drama playing out in this quiet office. "Your uncle, Philip, is worried," he finally said. "He should be." I pulled up a file on my computer, turned the screen so he could see. His development company has been mismanaged for years. The books are a mess. The projects are behind schedule. And the investors. I paused. "Well, let's just say I'm not the only one who's noticed." "You're going to take it from him?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm going to fix it. Whether he stays or goes depends entirely on him. Like I said last night, merit matters." My father was quiet for a long moment. Then the Honda. I actually laughed. "Still stuck on that, aren't you? Tell me, Dad, what's worth more? A car that gets me where I need to go, or the 3 tech startups I bought instead of wasting money on a status symbol?" He had no answer for that. My phone buzzed. The market was opening. Time to watch my latest acquisition's stock price respond to the news. "I have work to do," I said, standing. "Was there anything else?" He stood too, straightening his tie. "A nervous habit I remember from childhood. Your mother wants to have dinner. The whole family. To apologize, I suppose." I shook my head. "I'm not interested in apologies, Dad. I'm interested in understanding. Do they understand now that success isn't about what you show, but what you build? Do they understand that their mockery, their judgment, their constant competition for status, that it all means nothing in the real world of business?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm starting to." As if on cue, my phone lit up with a notification. The stock price of my new acquisition was soaring. Another quiet victory. "I'll think about dinner," I said finally. "But first, I have a company to run." Actually, several companies. After he left, Sarah came in with an update. The board of Philip's company is requesting an emergency meeting. Victoria left 3 messages about her position at the firm, and your mother sent flowers. I smiled. The flowers? I had them sent to the children's hospital, as per your standing instructions. Good. I turned back to my work. And Sarah? If any more family members show up. I know, she nodded. They need an appointment, just like everyone else. The next few weeks were interesting. My cousins suddenly discovered humility. Uncle Philip agreed to step down and let professional management take over his company. Victoria actually started doing her job instead of relying on her name. And my father, well, he did something I never expected. He sold his Bentley and bought a Toyota. When I asked him why, he said something that actually made me proud. Because I finally realized that what you drive doesn't matter nearly as much as where you're going. 6 months later, I hosted a family dinner. Not at a fancy restaurant, but at my still modest apartment. They came, all of them, dressed more simply than I'd ever seen them. Over simple homemade pasta. Yes, I cook. My mother finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. How did you do it, Alexandra? Really? I looked around at their faces, no longer smug, no longer judging, just genuinely curious. I watched. I said. I learned. I stayed quiet and built something real while you were all busy building appearances. I took a sip of wine, not $100 bottles, just good wine that I actually enjoyed. And most importantly, I never confused having money with having worth. Victoria, who'd recently earned an actual promotion based on merit, nodded. You taught us all something, Alex, even if we didn't want to learn it. I smiled. That's what teachers do best. Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city. My phone buzzed with another alert. Another successful acquisition, another quiet victory. But this time, I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, because true success isn't about proving your worth to others. It's about proving it to yourself. And I'd done that, one silent victory at a time, in a Honda Civic that had carried me further than all their luxury cars combined. The crystal glasses clinked against the mahogany bars of the Lancaster Hotel's grand ballroom. My brother's wedding reception was in full swing, a celebration of not just his marriage to the perfect socialite bride, but of everything the Sullivan name represented in Boston's elite circles. I sat at my assigned table, purposefully distanced from the family section, watching the scene unfold. The string quartet played softly, the champagne flowed freely, and Boston's elite mingled with practiced ease. My father, James Sullivan, worked the room like the king he believed himself to be, his silver hair catching the light, his tuxedo immaculate. My phone buzzed silently. A message from Diana, my lawyer. All documents filed. Ready when you are. 3 years of careful planning had led to this moment. 3 years since I discovered the truth about my father's empire, about my grandmother's stolen legacy, about everything the Sullivan name really meant. Julia. My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. She stood beside my table, elegant in her designer gown, disapproval etched on her face. Couldn't you have done something with your hair? It's your brother's wedding. I touched my simple updo, which had cost more than her entire outfit. Hello, Mother. You look lovely. She clutched her champagne glass like a shield. At least you came. Though Michael wasn't sure he wanted to invite you, after everything. Everything. Such a convenient way to package the past 3 years. My dramatic departure from Sullivan Properties, my supposed failure to launch my own career, my absence from family functions. They'd crafted the perfect narrative. Poor Julia, too weak for the business world, too soft for the Sullivan way. If only they knew. I wouldn't miss my brother's wedding, I said softly, watching Michael dance with his new bride, Sarah. She was perfect for him. Old money, impeccable manners, and most importantly, a thorough understanding of her place in the Sullivan hierarchy. My mother hesitated, trying not to cause a scene. Your father's in a good mood. Let's keep it that way. I smiled, thinking about the envelope in my clutch. Don't worry, Mother. Everything will happen exactly as it should. The night progressed predictably. Toasts were made, dances were shared, and Boston's elite congratulated themselves on another successful merger of prominent families. I watched it all from my quiet corner, remembering the night 3 years ago when everything changed. I'd found the documents in my father's private safe, the original will my grandmother had signed before her death, so different from the version that appeared afterward. Then I discovered more. Forged papers, threatened witnesses, decades of systematic fraud that had built the Sullivan empire. When I'd confronted him, he'd laughed. This is business, Julia, he'd said dismissively. You're too soft to understand. This is why Michael will run the company. He gets it. I'd walked away that day, but not before making copies of everything. Then I'd spent 3 years building my own empire under a different name. Alexander Rose Properties, named after my grandmother. No one had made the connection because no one had ever bothered to learn her full name. Now, as the reception reached its peak, my father clinked his glass for attention. Time for his speech. Today, he beamed. My son Michael proves himself once again to be a true Sullivan. He's chosen a wonderful bride. He's leading our company to record profits, and he understands what this family name means. His eyes found me in the crowd. Unlike some who share our blood, but not our values. The room grew quiet. Even Michael looked uncomfortable. Julia, my father continued, his voice carrying across the ballroom, you may have been born a Sullivan, but you've proven you don't deserve our name. Your weakness, your so-called ethics, they have no place in our world. I stood slowly, every eye in the room on me. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. You're right, Dad, I said, my voice clear and calm. I don't deserve the Sullivan name. I deserve better. I walked toward him, opening my clutch and removing the envelope. Consider this my wedding gift to the family. He took the envelope, probably expecting a check or a card, but as he opened it, his face turned ash white. What is this? The deed to your house, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, and the mortgage documents showing that Alexander Rose Properties now owns it. I'm your new landlord. The room erupted in whispers. My father's hands shook as he read the papers. This is impossible, he stammered. Alexander Rose, that was your grandmother's. Yes, I smiled. The grandmother you cheated. Turns out I learned more from you than you thought. I just chose to use those lessons differently. The crystal glasses stopped clinking. The string quartet faltered. Boston's elite stood frozen, watching their king being dethroned by his own daughter. You can't do this, my father hissed, gripping the papers so tightly they crumpled. I'll fight it. Like you fought grandmother's will? I asked quietly. Or should we discuss how you manipulated those documents too? Should we talk about Janet Miller, the nurse you threatened? Or maybe about the offshore accounts where you hide the properties you stole? Michael stepped forward, leaving his bride on the dance floor. "Julia, what are you doing? This is my wedding." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "And Dad just chose to use it as a platform to publicly denounce me. I'm simply responding in kind." Diana emerged from the crowd, tablet in hand. "Mr. Sullivan, we have documentation of systematic fraud dating back to 1998, including the illegal acquisition of Alexander Rose Montgomery's property portfolio. Would you like to discuss this publicly, or should we move this conversation somewhere more private?" The whispers grew louder. Phones appeared in hands as Boston's elite sensed a scandal brewing. My mother appeared at my father's side, her face a mask of barely controlled panic. "Private room," she whispered urgently. Now, we moved to a conference room off the main ballroom. My father, mother, Michael, Diana, and me. The door closed behind us, muffling the buzz of speculation we'd left behind. "You think you can destroy everything I built?" my father growled, pacing like a caged animal. "No, Dad. I'm exposing how you destroyed everything grandmother built." I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. "This press release goes live at midnight. Alexander Rose Properties acquires Sullivan Properties debt portfolio in historic deal. Want to know how I did it?" "That's impossible," Michael interjected. "I oversee all our holdings." "There's no way. Check the shell companies Dad created in the Caymans," I suggested. "The ones he used to hide grandmother's properties. Better yet, check this." I handed Michael another document, the original will our grandmother had signed, leaving her properties to me with specific instructions for community development and affordable housing. "Dad made sure this version disappeared," I explained. "Just like he made sure Janet Miller disappeared after she witnessed him threatening grandmother to sign the new will." My mother sat heavily in a chair. "James, tell me this isn't true." But my father's face said everything. He knew he was caught. "You were always too soft," he spat at me. "Just like your grandmother, with her foolish ideas about community service and ethical development." "No, Dad, I was never soft. I was patient. And while you were laughing at my supposed failures, I was building something you never could, an honest empire." Diana laid out more documents. Alexander Rose Properties now controls 60% of Sullivan Properties debt, along with direct ownership of key assets, including the family estate. "We're prepared to negotiate terms, but only if Mr. Sullivan agrees to step down immediately." Michael was reading through the papers, his face growing paler by the minute. "The community center demolition. Mrs. Chen's family restaurant. Dad, what did you do?" "What I had to do," my father exploded. "To build something that would last. To create a legacy." "You stole my legacy," I said quietly. "Grandmother's legacy. And now, I'm taking it back." The room fell silent, except for the muffled sounds of the reception continuing outside. My father's carefully constructed world was crumbling, and he knew it. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice hollow. "Justice," I replied. "Starting with the return of every property you stole, the restoration of every business you destroyed, and the implementation of grandmother's original vision for ethical development in Boston. You'll destroy everything." "No, Dad. I'll rebuild everything. The right way." The morning after my brother's wedding, Boston's financial district buzzed with carefully controlled chaos. Headlines dominated every major newspaper and business website. "Sullivan Properties Empire faces takeover. Alexander Rose Properties reveals true ownership." real estate dynasty, rocked by fraud allegations. I sat in my office on the 40th floor of what had been Sullivan Plaza, now renamed Rose Tower as of this morning. The view of Boston Harbor stretched before me, sunlight glinting off the water just as it had when my grandmother had occupied this same office decades ago. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. 3 calls from the DA's office. Messages from every major news outlet. Dozens of emails from Sullivan Properties board members. A string of increasingly desperate texts from my father. But the message that caught my attention was from Sarah, my new sister-in-law. We need to talk. Breakfast? I hadn't expected that. At the wedding, after the confrontation, Sarah had managed to keep the reception going with remarkable poise. While my father raged and my mother wept in the private room, Sarah had orchestrated a seamless continuation of the celebration, preventing total social disaster. Ms. Montgomery. My assistant Thomas appeared at the door. I'd officially started using my grandmother's surname this morning. Your brother's here. Michael walked in, still in his wedding suit from last night. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept. He tossed a thick folder on my desk, the complete documentation I'd given him last night. I read everything, he said. Twice. And I need to know why you waited 3 years to expose this. I turned to the wall of windows, watching the city wake up. Because I needed to be certain. To build something strong enough to withstand the fallout. To make sure that when I took everything back, I could do it right. The offshore accounts were just the beginning, I confirmed. Dad's been laundering money through shell companies for decades. The properties he stole from grandmother were just his practice run. Michael sank into a chair. The community center demolition. I signed those papers. He told me it was abandoned property. It wasn't. He forced them out by tripling the rent, then declared it derelict, just like he did to the Chen family restaurant, the immigrant housing complex on River Street, the historic theater district. Stop. Michael held up his hand. I get it. I was part of it. I just didn't know. Because you didn't want to know, I said softly. It was easier to believe I was the weak one, the soft one, while you followed in his footsteps. What happens now? I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall behind me transformed into a digital display. Property maps, development plans, and financial projections filled the screens. Now we rebuild. Everything he destroyed, we restore. Starting with the Chen family restaurant and the community center. I pulled out a contract. Alexander Rose Properties needs a chief development officer, someone who understands both sides of this business, someone ready to learn a better way. Michael stared at the contract. You trust me, after everything. I trust that you've seen the truth now. The question is, what will you do with it? Before he could answer, Thomas appeared again. Ms. Montgomery, your father's here. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Michael half rose from his chair, but I waved him back down. Let him in, I said. It's time to finish this. James Sullivan stormed into my office, looking nothing like the polished real estate mogul yesterday. His clothes were rumpled, his silver hair unkempt, his eyes wild with a mixture of rage and fear. You think you can just take everything? He snarled. I built this company. No, I corrected calmly. You stole this company, piece by piece, starting with grandmother's properties. I simply took back what was rightfully mine. I pulled up more documents on the digital wall. The DA's office is particularly interested in your meetings with Commissioner Bradley about the zoning changes. The ones you claimed never happened. My father's face went pale. You recorded? No, Dad. You recorded it. Your own security system, remember? The one you were so proud of installing. I found the backup files in your private server. What do you want? My father's voice cracked, the fight beginning to drain from him. I want you to look, I said, gesturing to the digital display. Really look at what you destroyed. I pulled up images. The Chen family standing in front of their restaurant on opening day in 1975, the community center's after-school program graduation, the historic theater's final performance before mysterious structural issues forced its closure. These were people's lives, Dad, their dreams, their legacies, just like grandmother's legacy, the one you stole from her deathbed. Michael stood, moving closer to the display. The River Street Project. Those weren't empty buildings we demolished, were they? No, I confirmed. Dad had already arranged their eviction through shell companies, raised rents by 300% overnight, made it impossible for families who'd lived there for generations to stay. It was business, our father protested weakly. Progress. It was cruel, I cut him off. And illegal. The DA has enough evidence to put you away for decades, but that's not what I want. I pulled out another document, a comprehensive agreement I'd spent months preparing. Sign this, I said. Full confession of your financial crimes, immediate resignation from Sullivan Properties, transfer of all remaining assets to Alexandra Rose Properties. In exchange, I'll ensure the criminal investigation focuses on Commissioner Bradley and the zoning board, not you. You'd protect me, he laughed bitterly. After everything? No, Dad. I'm protecting our family name. What's left of it. Sign, and you can retire quietly. Keep your house as my tenant. Maintain your social standing. Play golf with your corrupt friends. Fight me, and everything comes out. Michael picked up the agreement, reading carefully. The Alexandra Rose Foundation. What is this? Grandmother's original vision, I explained. Mixed income housing developments, small business support programs, community space restoration. Everything she wanted to build before Dad decided profit mattered more than people. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking old. Your mother already agreed to head the foundation's board, I said. Turns out she has quite a talent for charitable organization. Another thing you never noticed about her. The silence stretched as my father stared at the agreement. Finally, he picked up a pen. You really are her granddaughter, he said quietly, signing his name. Yes, I agreed. I am. That's what you never understood. Grandmother's strength wasn't in bullying or manipulation. It was in vision, in purpose, in building something meaningful. After he left, Michael remained, holding the CDO contract I'd offered him. If I take this, he said, I want to start with the River Street project. Make it right. It won't be easy. I warned. These people have every reason to hate the Sullivan name. Then maybe it's time we earned back their trust, the right way. As he signed the contract, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Still on for breakfast? I have ideas for the Foundation's youth program. I showed Michael the message. Your wife's impressive. She is, he agreed. Said she always knew something was wrong with how Dad operated. Called it old boys club corruption on our first date. Smart woman. Yeah. He stood, straightening his tie. The press is going to be all over this. Let them. It's time Boston knew the truth about both sides of the Sullivan legacy, the corruption and the redemption. Looking out over the harbor, I could almost see my grandmother standing there, proud not of the buildings she'd owned, but of what she'd planned to do with them. Now, finally, her vision would become reality. The Sullivan Empire had fallen, but the Montgomery legacy was just beginning. 1 month after the wedding that shattered Boston's real estate dynasty, I stood on the construction site of what had once been the Chen family restaurant. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the partially demolished building, where workers were carefully preserving the original facade while modernizing the interior. Mr. Chen stood beside me, his weathered hands gripping the original deed I'd returned to him last week. "My father built this place," he said quietly. "Worked 3 jobs to buy it. Then one day papers come, rent triple, and we lose everything." "Not everything," I corrected, showing him the renovation plans. "We're restoring it exactly as it was, with updated kitchen facilities and an expanded dining room. The apartment upstairs will be yours again, and the rent will be locked in at the 1975 rate, adjusted only for standard inflation." He studied my face, searching for deception. He'd learned to distrust the Sullivan name. Why? Because my grandmother believed in building communities, not destroying them. And because it's time someone fixed my father's mistakes. My phone buzzed. Michael sending updates from the community center reconstruction site across town. He'd thrown himself into the restoration projects with unexpected passion, working alongside construction crews, meeting with displaced families, learning the human cost of our father's empire. The past month had transformed Boston's real estate landscape. Sullivan Properties had been fully absorbed into Alexander Rose Properties. The DA's investigation had uncovered widespread corruption in the zoning board. Commissioner Bradley faced multiple indictments. My father had retreated to his now rented mansion, making no public statements. My mother had surprised everyone by excelling at her role with the foundation. But most importantly, we'd begun the real work, restoring what was stolen, rebuilding what was destroyed, and creating something new from the ashes of the Sullivan Empire. "Ms. Montgomery?" Sarah approached, tablet in hand. My sister-in-law had proven to be an unexpected ally, bringing fresh perspectives and genuine commitment to the Foundation's mission. "The River Street families are here." I turned to see a group of people gathering near the construction trailers, former residents of the immigrant housing complex my father had demolished. Many had lived there for generations before being forced out. "Mr. Chen," I said, "would you join us? These people should hear your story." He nodded, clutching his deed like a shield. The meeting was held in what would become the restaurant's new community room. 30 families, each with their own story of loss and displacement, listened as Mr. Chen described his family's journey from ownership to eviction and back to restoration. Alexander Rose Properties isn't just rebuilding buildings, I explained, displaying the development plans. We're restoring communities. Every family here will have the right to return to River Street at their original rent rates. The new complex will include green spaces, community facilities, and small business incubators. "Why should we trust another Sullivan?" Someone called out. "You shouldn't," I agreed. "That's why I'm not one anymore." The Montgomery name, my grandmother's name, stands for something different, and we'll prove it, one building at a time. Michael arrived as the meeting ended, his suit dusty from the community center site. "They've uncovered the original cornerstone," he reported. "The time capsule is still there." The community center's time capsule, buried in 1962 by the neighborhood's founding families. My father had claimed it was lost during demolition. "We'll open it at the restoration ceremony," I decided. Let people see their history wasn't completely destroyed. Julia. Michael hesitated. Dad's asking to meet. Says he has information about other properties, other families we should help. I considered this. Is he trying to save himself or make amends? Maybe both. The DA's closing in on his old partners. He might be trying to get ahead of it. Set the meeting for tomorrow. It's time he contributed to the rebuilding. My phone buzzed again. Diana with updates. 3 more properties recovered through legal channels. Settlement negotiations with displaced businesses proceeding well. Foundation's first scholarship program launching next month. Historical Preservation Society offering partnership. Ms. Montgomery. Mr. Chin approached as others left. My daughter. She architect now. She want to help design new buildings. Community buildings. I smiled, remembering my grandmother's words about legacy being more than just property. Have her call my office. We're building something new here. We need people who understand both the past and the future. The next morning, I sat across from my father in my office, watching him struggle with his new reality. He'd aged years in the past month, his once commanding presence diminished by the weight of his exposed crimes. The waterfront district, he said, spreading old documents across my desk. There were 12 families, craftsmen, boat builders. I used shell companies to force them out in '95. I know, I replied. We've already located 10 of them, but 2 families disappeared completely. He nodded, pulling out a worn envelope. The Martinez and the O'Briens. I paid them extra to vanish. The Martinez went to Miami. The O'Briens to Ireland. Why? They knew too much, saw the paperwork I'd forged, threatened to expose everything. I took the envelope, examining its contents. Addresses, contact information, details of the payoffs. Why tell me this now? Because, he said quietly, your grandmother made me promise to protect those families. Instead, I destroyed them, just like I destroyed everything else she built. Before I could respond, Thomas appeared at the door. Ms. Montgomery? They found something at the River Street site. In the construction zone that afternoon, workers had uncovered a hidden basement room beneath the old housing complex. Inside, we found boxes of documents, my grandmother's original plans for the neighborhood, correspondence with community leaders, and detailed records of my father's systematic takeover. She knew, I realized, reading through the papers. She was gathering evidence against you. Yes, my father admitted. That's why I had to act when she got sick. She was planning to expose everything. Michael joined us, his face grim as he examined the documents. There's more, Julia. Records of other properties, other families. Dad's operation was bigger than we thought. I turned to my father. How many? Dozens, he whispered, across 3 states, all people your grandmother had promised to protect. The scope of his crimes, and our responsibility to make things right, expanded with each box we uncovered. But something else emerged too. My grandmother's complete vision for ethical urban development, decades ahead of its time. This is remarkable, Sarah said, reviewing the plans. Mixed income housing, green spaces, small business initiatives, cultural preservation. She had it all mapped out. And now we'll build it. I decided, exactly as she planned, starting here. Over the next several hours, we laid out my grandmother's documents across the construction site's planning room. A blueprint emerged not just for buildings, but for community restoration on a scale Boston hadn't seen in decades. My phone buzzed constantly. Diana coordinating with legal teams across states. The foundation launching outreach programs. Contractors adjusting plans to match my grandmother's vision. Media requesting interviews about the discoveries. Julia, Michael called, holding up a sealed envelope. You need to see this. The envelope, dated just days before her death, contained my grandmother's last letter to me. My dearest Julia, if you're reading this, you found what I had to hide. Your father's crimes run deep, but your strength runs deeper. I've watched you grow, seen your heart for justice and your mind for business. You are my true heir, not just to my properties, but to my vision of what this city could be. Build it right, my darling. Build it for everyone. Love, Alexandra Rose Montgomery. As I read her words, surrounded by the evidence of both destruction and potential rebirth, I finally understood the full weight of my grandmother's legacy and the true purpose of my 3-year journey to reclaim it. We'll need to expand the foundation, Sarah suggested. Create dedicated teams for each community restoration project. Michael nodded. And establish a legal aid fund for displaced families seeking restitution. Your grandmother, my father said softly, would be proud, not just of what you've reclaimed, but of what you're building. I looked at him, this broken man who'd chosen power over purpose, and felt not triumph, but determination. Help us find them, I said. Every family you displaced, every business you destroyed. Help us make it right. He met my eyes for the first time in weeks. Where do we start? With the truth, I replied. All of it. As the sun set over the construction site, casting long shadows across the foundations of what would become my grandmother's vision realized, I thought about legacy. Not the false legacy of power and profit that my father had pursued, but the true legacy of building something meaningful, something that lifted people up instead of tearing them down. The Sullivan Empire had fallen, but from its ruins, the Montgomery vision would rise, stronger, truer, and built to last. Not just for profit, but for people. Not just for power, but for purpose. Not just for now, but for generations to come.